Okay, Pfeffer,
Here.
Fragoso is absent. Jansen is absent. Kelly,
Here.
Newton,
Here.
Chair Swift,
Here.
Never mind. Now for approval of the agenda, and I was going to recommend or request that we move public comments before consent. But considering the agenda, I would also ask that we move minutes and commissioner comments after item 1. Any other requests or changes to the agenda?
A clarification. There's nothing on the consent calendar, right?
Correct.
Okay. But you want to move the public expression before the consent calendar. All right. I move to approve the agenda with the open time for public expression before the consent calendar and the minutes and commissioner comments. Is that what you said? Moved up to after the consent calendar?
I was going to have it after the first item.
Oh, after forest and before
Correct.
we get encroachment permits. Okay, how's that for a motion?
I'll second that.
all right, I call roll. We've got Pfeffer,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Newton,
Yes.
Chair Swift,
Yes. So I'm going to read the meeting protocol. Oops, sorry. The chair shall maintain order at the meetings in accordance with Robert's Rules of Order, and the commission has the responsibility to be a model of respectful behavior in order to encourage community participation and citizen input at commission meetings. The commission and the audience are expected to refrain from using profane language and or ridiculing the character or motive of commission members, staff, or members of the public, and to maintain the standards of tolerance and civility. For public comments on non-agenda items, anyone wishing to address the commission on matters not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the commission must do so by email, in person, or via Zoom. And do we have anyone in the audience that would like to make public comment? Seeing none,
We do have one hand raised online. I'm not sure if it's for public comment, but we should ask. Amy Flynn, do you have a public comment at this time?
Sorry, I was raising my hand for the first item.
Okay,
My
no
apologies.
problem. Please raise it again and I'll.
Okay.
so there's no public comments. So we will go on to the first public hearing item, 97 Forest Avenue. We have the staff report, please.
Okay, so the project proposes to expand and remodel the existing approximately 1,179 square foot, 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 3-story house. Approximately 251 square feet would be added to the main floor and approximately 321 square feet would be added to the upper floor, while approximately 42 square feet have been removed from the lower floor for a total net expansion of approximately 530 square feet and a resulting house size of approximately 1,709 square feet. The new building footprint would be roughly the same as what had existed, with a minor expansion to the back and a slight reduction on the eastern back side that would move the house further from the eastern property boundary and increase the setback on that side of the house. Over 50% of the existing house would be remodeled, including reconfiguring all 3 floors. Exterior changes include a new gable roof with a dormer located at the back of the house. The new roof would be either dark gray composite shingles that would match the existing roof, or dark gray standing seam metal. The house would be clad in horizontal plank hardy siding, with board and batten hardy siding proposed at the front entry and ADU entry inset walls. Other exterior modifications include new windows and a new front entry porch and stairway. The property owner has already implemented some project elements, but was stopped in process. So the project also includes legalizing the already constructed improvements. No new plant material, irrigation, or landscape features are proposed. Existing vegetation would be trimmed and pruned or removed in compliance with the approved vegetative management plan. The project requires approval of a hill area residential development permit because the project site has a slope of approximately 41% and requires 50 cubic yards of grading. Approval of a design review permit for, or over 50 cubic yards. Approval of a design review permit is required for the 50% remodel. And approval of a combined side yard setback variance is required because a portion of the proposed addition would encroach into the 20-foot combined side yard setback. And approval of a parking variance is required to allow parking in the required side yard and to allow the spaces to be compact. The initial submittal reviewed by the town engineer didn't include a grading and erosion control plan or a site plan showing existing utilities, or a proposed site plan showing retaining wall drain outfall alignments or proposed surface drainage improvements. However, the town engineer determined that even without those items, there was enough information to facilitate the code compliant design of the project, as long as those items are submitted with a building permit for review and approval by the town engineer. So subsequent to the town engineer's determination, the applicant included these items on the plans, and those are on page A-1.1, but they have not been reviewed by the town engineer as he has been out on an unspecified leave. So resolution 2023-07 includes a condition of project approval that the proposed retaining wall, drain outfall alignments, the existing utilities, proposed surface drainage improvements, a construction management plan, and a grading and erosion control plan shall be provided with the building permit for review and approval by the town engineer. The siting and design of the residence is generally in keeping with other residences in the neighborhood and provides a balanced, well-composed design on the project site. The proposed exterior changes in addition are sympathetic in their design, harmoniously blending with the rest of the house in a way that is unobtrusive and subdued, maintaining its character. The proposed addition would expand the house to the back, past the existing footprint at the back of the house, but would follow the line of the existing structure along the sides, resulting in a combined side yard setback of approximately 10 feet. The property has an irregular trapezoidal shape, and it tapers as it goes up slope at an average rate of about 41% from Forest Avenue. So it ranges in width from approximately 50 to 47 feet where the addition is proposed. The irregular shape, steep slope, and relatively narrow width of the property make it difficult to comply with this combined side yard setback requirement. The property would maintain similar setbacks from the property lines as other developed properties in the vicinity, many of which have structures within the combined side yard setback. The strict application of the combined side yard setback requirement would deprive the property owner of privileges enjoyed by other property owners in the vicinity and under identical zone classification. Granting of the variance would not create a safety hazard or any other condition inconsistent with the objectives of the zoning ordinance. The irregular shape, steep slope, and relatively narrow width of the site make it difficult to comply with the town's parking requirements without causing further site disturbance and or requiring the construction of new parking improvements. The strict application of the setback and parking regulations would result in an increased and unnecessary site disruption, which would be an unreasonable hardship for the owner. So staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve that application number 2309 by adopting resolution number 202307 that sets forth the findings and conditions of project approval. So that concludes the staff report. Yeah. Yeah. So there was a comment from a commissioner prior to the meeting requesting additional findings for the design review permit. And I prepared some of those. Would you like me to read those now? Okay, so Town Code section 17.020.030A requires that the Fairfax Planning Commission review and approve the design of all new residents and projects that constitute 50% remodels to ensure compliance with the design review criteria. So there are a number of design review criteria that are listed, and I won't describe those, but essentially the design review criteria. Do you want me to? Do you want me to read them, or should I just review, or should I just read how the project complies with them, or what would you?
I don't. So you were going to read all the criteria?
Yeah,
No.
so I just, okay.
You know, the criteria are just criteria that the commission's supposed to use when they're reviewing applications. So I think it would be, what we're just trying to do is get the findings that show how the project complies with the criteria in the staff report and then add them to the resolution so that it's more complete. So she is not, don't think she should read the criteria.
And I have,
Yeah.
No, but just as we get to the resolution, then identify how that resolution is going to be modified to put findings for the design review.
and I have written copies, so I don't, and you could look at those. Sorry. There might be an extra. Yeah, there's extra if he needs one. Yeah, it's just one page. Yeah. Okay, so the hillside setting of Forest Avenue is like many other residential neighborhoods in Fairfax and is characterized by an eclectic mix of homes surrounded by mature oak and bay trees, along with other native vegetation and landscaped yards. Forest Avenue is not a highly visually prominent street, and the project's location on Forest Avenue is largely obscured by vegetation and other structures. The proposed horizontal hardy siding that would be, sorry, I lost my place. The proposed horizontal hardy siding that would be painted light gray with wood eaves, fascia, and trim painted white generally conforms with the eclectic mix of homes in the surrounding vicinity. The house would increase in height by approximately an inch, which is a negligible increase that would not be out of scale with the neighborhood or site. The new building footprint would be roughly the same as what had existed, with a minor expansion to the back and a slight reduction on the eastern backside that would move the house further from the eastern property boundary, increasing the setback from the neighbor to the east. The house is and will remain situated on the site in a similar manner to other houses in the neighborhood and throughout the town. The siding and design of the residence is generally in keeping with the other residences in the neighborhood and provides a balanced, well-composed design on the project site. The proposed hardy horizontal plank siding and board and batten hardy siding proposed at the front entry and ADU entry inset walls would create a traditional aesthetic that would match existing siding on the house and maintain its character while providing a fire safety improvement. Painted white eaves, fascia, and trim would provide a classic, clean, and crisp look for the house's exterior and would provide a contrast to the light gray siding. The light gray siding would create a light, bright, and approachable house. The new gable roof would replace a mismatched, discordant roof line with a gable roof that would create a more uniform and balanced appearance. No new landscaping is proposed, and the project would require minimal disturbance to a site that has been previously disturbed by the existing development. The proposed addition is sympathetic in its design, harmoniously blending with the rest of the house in a way that is unobtrusive and subdued, maintaining its character. So those were the additional findings that I thought. And I don't know if you want to add them all or if you want to wait. We could wait till we get to the resolution, but you could decide what you'd like to add.
I think we'll wait till we get to the resolution. Is that the end? Thank you. Is that the end of the staff report? Any commissioners have questions for staff on this item?
Can you tell us what work was done prior to the stop work?
I have a general idea based on looking at what the house looked like before and the plans, but I think we'd have to ask the architect and the applicant more specifically because I don't want to speak out of or misspeak on what was done.
But because it's a developed site, there were a lot of existing retaining walls and fences and stuff that we don't really know how long they were there. I'm using my memory from 20 years ago, which is not really the right way to do it. So I think we're going to have to ask them to really address that.
Okay. No work to the carport or the
No
fence
work.
at the
I
front?
know there was no work to the carport.
But no planned work that I can tell from
No,
the project to
No,
the
that's-
carport or the fence above the carport.
well, the applicants agreed that he's planning on lowering the fences. He understands they're too tall.
Okay.
Yeah,
Is that
I think
documented here or that's just what we've,
he's just told us that verbally.
No, it's in the resolution, but we, yeah, it's in the resolution.
And do you know
yeah.
the fence that he put on top of the carport? Is that going to be lowered to safety railing height?
We need to add an additional
Yeah.
condition that it in the resolution because we don't have one for that right now.
Okay.
that's it. Thank you.
Commissioner Newton has her hand raised.
Commissioner Newton?
Thank you. I'm curious about there's an option between dark gray composite shingled roof or dark gray burnished slate standing seam metal roof. And I'm just curious, I know the fire department requirement is just, I think, Class A roof assembly. But I don't recall seeing too many metal roofs in town. And I'm just wondering if that's something that I'm just haven't noticed, or is that somewhat out of the ordinary?
No, we do have a couple, the metal roofs on a couple. I'm trying to remember an address off the top of my head. I can't, but I thought 5 Woodland Road was a metal roof. What?
There's one on Blackberry.
Tara says there's one on Blackberry. So the fire department is okay with them.
Yeah, I think that's what I was wondering about, but they just say Class A assembly. So I think I'm just curious what our experience was. I love the sound of rain on a metal roof.
Yeah. And they will check it again at the building permit stage. So, but we do have some, they have approved some in town.
Any other questions for staff? So I have a couple. Northern spotted owl nesting area.
No, the project
Okay.
is, that side of town doesn't have any.
Okay. And my other question had to do with our dark sky standard, and the staff report mentions a new overhead light fixture was installed with the ADU inset entrance when it was constructed. And then it states, to ensure the compliance of the new exterior lighting with the town's dark sky requirements, the resolution will have the dark sky standard language in it. My question was related, since the ADU was mentioned in the staff report. Is that lighting dark sky compliant? Do you know? Is it outside the,
It's in an area that's completely kind of enclosed. There's just an opening on one side and it's like a recessed light. Yeah.
okay, it wasn't clear. All right,
Yes.
thanks. Maybe we can bring the applicant. Is the applicant here? We can bring the applicant up. And if there's anything you wanted to say, introduce yourself. And then if we have any questions for you, we can ask them. Thanks.
Check 1, 2. All right. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for making this happen. I know that was very stressful, and maybe everybody online didn't see that, but champions, you guys are great. Yeah. My name's Jay Sherlock. I'm an architect. I live in Fairfax. My office is in San Anselmo. So I'm a local citizen architect in the area. Want to say that I love this couple, very young couple. They're really just getting in a little bit of trouble because they're trying so hard. They attempted to do a project years ago. You may have seen it. They learned a hard lesson. It came in at millions of dollars. So they've had to scratch that, and we're just working to get as much as we can on a budget. And that we'll jump back to the roof thing in a second with that comment. Just to kind of keep it basic and moving, the house and how it looks is very chopped up and non-symmetrical. So a lot of the work that we're just doing is to clean it up and any parts added, to make it harmonious with the neighborhood and this kind of woodsy character, and really balance out some of those exterior elevations. It's a pretty rough house. And we could go over that if the staff wanted to. Setbacks. So this house has already encroached on setbacks. One of the biggest moves we're doing is cutting off a portion of the house. I believe it's on the east side that was in the side yard setback all the way up to the property line. So we're, not only attempting to make the project a bit more aesthetically pleasing, but also every chance we get, or that I get, I'm bringing it into code a bit more. So we've been able to shave the setback. Side setbacks are tough. It's a very unique property, upsloping, funny little shape. So another thing we're trying to do, which I think was mentioned, is, just not scarring the earth much and not trying to dig a lot. It's very tough on a sloped site such as this one. In the first project that was proposed here had a tremendous amount of excavation. So just letting everybody know, we've brought that down to the bare minimum. And I think maybe just to jump on some of those things that were spoken about just a minute ago, downlighting, night sky. The one light that is exterior on a wall is downlighting. We have those specs in the drawings. And the other two entries, they are recessed, both of them. And then, yes, they have recessed can lights. So we're doing a really good job of just keeping those barely glowing. let's see here. So apologize. The roof options, that kind of has to do with the budget. So as we're speaking tonight, these things are coming up about tall fences and garage guardrail and heights. So, depending on how things go here, the budget, is constantly getting cut due to more architectural hours, more engineering, staff permits. So, we would love to do the metal standing seam roof. It fits really well. There are lots of them in Fairfax. Just on the street that I live, there's 3, and I would love to do one soon. You really can't beat it in terms of fire rating. And it looks very cute in the neighborhood. You can see it, all over the area. Yes, and then garage guardrail, definitely we could drop that down, so everyone kind of talks amongst yourself. Don't want to increase the budget. It has been there for decades. Sure, we can jump on Google Maps and just rewind back to the 80s and see how that looked. And same goes with the tall fences. Some of the fences appear to be taller than they are as they're sitting on top of retaining walls, and then the fence starts. So just know that we're ready to work with you on all of that stuff. So just throw that in the conditions of approval, and we won't fight that. And that essentially we're preparing for, and just, it would cut back on budgets for the house. So we'd love to have a minimal amount of retro fitting as possible. Safety and code, I think, first, and aesthetic second. But I think that would kind of be my words about the project.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions for the applicant? Go ahead.
So can you explain to us or tell us how much of what's drawn in this application already exists, even though it's in a proposed drawing?
Yes, I can.
In other words, how much work's been done? I'm just trying to figure out, what are we actually evaluating tonight? Is it already built? What's there?
Yeah, lots of times I've become a specialist in terms of projects that may have started a little bit. So I like to focus on what was and what is, and if that's within code and we're going for it. But this project does have, some things we could talk about. I think the main piece is the retaining wall across the back of the property, fairly large size. It was planned in the previous set of drawings, and it's just been reduced as much as possible, and been designed by an engineer. I've been able to collect some pictures, so we have another step to go with the building department with that. And we want to keep the shape of the wall since it's so low and into the ground. So if there are any additional things to add to it, we're going to try to keep the exact same shape. And, I don't think we need to add anything to it. But we'll be doing that within the earth, or, hiding it as much as possible. And then a portion of the back addition that we're proposing, the floor area was kind of cleaned up and excavated, and not excavated, but kind of just cleaned out. There's a crawl space that's open. So there's a lot of open framing right now. I would say, like maybe 40 to 60% of the floor was kind of started. So you can just see right through into a crawl space in the top of the level below. And none of that was finished to the sky, that addition. So it was just kind of the floor area. And but there had to be some demo that was done near the back side of the house. So it's just getting protected by plastic now, trying not to get wet with all of these rains. It's been a really tough year for the house. But everything's looking great. And at this point, we're looking to finish off that back end, is, if we can wrap it up, just to protect the house and the neighborhood. Essentially, we don't want this to stay open too long. And then a little bit of work to the facade, working on those entry steps. They were pretty dangerous before. So all of that's kind of getting cleaned up and was put on hold as soon as this process started. And that's about it. A little bit of work to the ADU at the entry inset. Stairs that used to go down to the lower level are removed. So the two levels will be separate. And that's kind of the gist of it.
So it looks like some of the siding on the, I guess it would be north side of the house is already complete, as well as window modifications, things like that. Is that true?
Yes, that front entryway, correct. The facade of the house and turning the corner a little bit on that same side as you walk up. Yeah, with the front entry stairs.
Okay, so just to be clear, some of the design review that we're being asked to do tonight is actually already complete.
I review that's actually
Completing construction, that north facade.
nothing's complete. This thing is wide open, but everything that I've brought up has been started. That's correct. Complete? No, there's a long way till completion, but yes, some work has been done. That's correct. Yeah.
Did you consider enclosing the stair the way it was before, so it wasn't just an open post stair?
I think we're into a lot of options, but right now the stairs are in the most affordable place, keeping that same shape. And then again, coming up with the budget and how much we can do and also what's been started. To enclose the whole house would be wonderful. I think it could also create a very boxy shape, which it's kind of nice to have a little relief. So I think it's got a good little design going at this point, but yes, we've kind of molded over a lot of the ideas and also, checking within budget and what it looks like on the exterior, not to make it a very flat exterior, but give it a little push and pull in shadow.
That's it for me. Thanks.
Okay.
Any other questions from commissioners for the applicant?
One, you noticed, you've mentioned the project scope changing just, as budget and as time goes on. Are there any elements in here that are being left already with a plan to maybe come back to them in the future? When time passed, people save up more, things like that.
I would say surrounding landscape site would be something that would be the next thing they're, very excited to jump onto. So, one thing at a time would be structure. Currently is my main focus, trying to get everybody just to allocate time and money into that. Let's wrap that up and clean up any mess that's there. And then they're just about always making things better. So the landscape would be the next thing to clean up. And you guys already kind of have that on the list going.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Okay.
Chair Swift, we did have the architect and I do see the applicant is online if there's something they may want to say.
We can ask the owner if there's any comments she wants or he wants to make.
And so I have unmuted you. If there's any comments you'd like to make at this time, please go ahead. Hi, we can hear you. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry I'm not there tonight. I'm at work. I'm a firefighter. I'm out in working in Hicks Valley tonight, so I couldn't attend. So thanks, Jay, for being there on my behalf. I think Jay answered the questions pretty well. Hopefully that answered all the questions you all had. If there's anything else, yeah, I'm happy to answer or have Jay answer. Whatever you guys need. And I just wanted to say actually this one thing. We did pull permits, like over the counter permits for the stairs and the siding before this the whole fiasco happened. And the stairs that were on the house were partially enclosed. They were enclosed kind of on the exterior, and there was like a weird, funky little bathroom underneath them. And there was major rot issues and water issues getting into those stairs because they were essentially like a roof deck that was stairs. So there was a lot of issues with that when we went to demo it and replace it. So that's why we stayed with the traditional deck style stairs. So that way water can drain off. We're not dealing with waterproofing. The siding can run right past and be kind of a simpler, better waterproofing situation. And then the siding we replaced. I'm a firefighter, so I really like hardy siding. It's fireproof, it looks nice, it's paintable, it lasts a long time. So I went with the hardy siding because it was the closest match to what was on the house, because the house had 3 different types of siding before. It was very, very chopped up, as Jay talked about. So the hardy siding kind of kept the best aesthetic feel, but with a more modern fireproof product.
Thank you. Any questions for the owner? Thank you. Any members of the public?
We do have a few more hands online. Amy Flynn, I have unmuted you. Please go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, sorry. Hello, Planning Commission. My husband Ian and I are neighbors who live within a few hundred feet of this home. And we're here to ask that the town approve this application. Before Zach and Zoe purchased the house, it was in high disrepair. And all the neighbors are very happy that they have wanted to improve the house and the lot to the overall benefit of all of the entire neighborhood. I am the co-leader of our neighborhood Firewise group, and Zach, who is a firefighter, has offered his expertise when needed. And we are a very tight-knit neighborhood, and I know of no one who has any reservations about this project. A few interesting things that have arisen tonight. The parking at that location is actually better than 90% of the street. I don't know how familiar you are all of Forest Avenue, but that property actually has parking. I guess there's something, you guys are talking about some issues about fence levels and things. The house is up high off the street. It's not visible from the street. I'm not an adjacent neighbor, but I'm very close. So I don't know that, I'm sure there's requirements, but anyway, I just wanted to say, I guess as a older person, a 30-year resident, I feel strongly in this economy that we need to encourage and assist young people who are able to purchase in this crazy economy. I feel like we need to help them in any way to improve these dilapidated houses. And it was a dilapidated house. It was a sad house before Zach and Zoe moved in any way they can. So thank you so much for hearing my comments.
Thank you, Amy. Are there any other hands raised?
Kobe Friedman, please go ahead.
Hello, Kobe Friedman here. I live across the street from Zach and Zoe. The best people you'll ever meet. I totally support the project. I don't think you should nitpick him on anything. That it's been costing him a bunch of money to meet the town's requirements, which are completely onerous and uncalled for. They're within the setbacks, the height limit. All kinds of houses in Fairfax that look in all kinds of different shapes and forms. And I don't think it's any of your business to get into somebody's pants and tell them how to live their life and how to build their house. That's basically the bottom line of it's insane. It's like the Gestapo. You guys have to let people be. Let them build as long as they're within the code limits, let them do what the hell they want to do. Three people can have 4 different opinions. It doesn't matter. They're within, you have limits, setbacks, height limits, let them go. That's it. Don't cost them more money than it should. You know, you're nearly bankrupting these people. They've been living with no roof throughout the whole winter. Can you imagine that? Because you red tag them. And I doubt this red tag was even legal. You're completely stepping your authority. Everybody in this town, this planning department is completely corrupt. It's a bunch of fucking liars. Get rid of them. That's what I would say. And protect people's property rights and makes their life easier, not harder. That should be your mission. Whether you're elected officials or appointed officials, we all live in this town. We're here for each other, and we don't want an enemy inside our town. You are the enemy.
Thank
That's
you.
my 2 cents. And you should approve them right away. No questions asked, unanimously. That's it. See you later.
Any other comments from the public?
I see no other hands raised at this time.
Thank you. So I will close public comments and bring it back to the commission for discussion.
I'm generally in support of the project. I think it's unfortunate that some of the items that are under the purview of this commission are complete before we were asked to review it. I applaud you, the applicant, for revitalizing this house. I am very familiar with the house. I actually really liked the old strip windows that sort of went around the corner. I'm sure they didn't keep much weather out, I'm sure they were cold in the winter and hot in the summer, et cetera. So I understand why you'd want to replace them, as aesthetically nice as they might have been. I think that front stair is an unfortunate aesthetic choice, but that's what it is. It's an aesthetic choice. I think overall the project is doing the right thing. It is going to make the neighborhood better. I think the carport, unfortunately, is what the neighborhood, sees. And I understand that you're probably choosing to spend your money on the things that you need to, and I get that. It's obvious. So I wish that the stair was a little bit further considered, and I wish that the guardrail over the carport wasn't as foreboding. But I don't think that either one of those things would stop me from being positive about the project.
Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Newton?
Yeah, first I just want to comment that, we have a meeting protocol. So disparaging the motives of our staff is, something I would like to discourage. I think staff are just doing their job. There's no, ill will here when they undertake to enforce our building code requirements and ask people to come and get their approvals before they undertake the work. That being said, I think, the architect made it clear that here, it would still be open if we were, inclined to change things that had been begun. So I disagree that, they've completed these things. I think he was very clear that it hadn't been completed. And I agree. Otherwise, I don't have any thing that I actually really appreciated the drawings and all the materials submitted with this application and don't have any objections to it. Over.
Thanks, Commissioner. Any other comments? Go ahead.
Yep. Generally, overall, similar comments you heard. Happy about the project, happy about the work, improving the property. The thing I was concerned with most going into the project and reading the report is just the construction process and how long it could be, and, you know, blocking up Forest Avenue, which I know can be an issue for the neighborhood, but it was encouraging to hear how supportive the neighbors are. Those comments I found. The first comment substantively very helpful, but it's still good in general to hear multiple neighbors come out and support. So I think that was great. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have a motion? And with that, is there any consideration of adding findings under the design review section as a part of that?
I'd move to approve the project, adding into the resolutions the second two paragraphs, or the final two paragraphs we reviewed, right? The ones not in quotes, starting with the hillside setting of Forest Avenue, and then the house would increase in height. Happy to take an amendment to that motion if other language on this page was meant to be included.
Could you help me out with that? Because I don't have a copy.
Yep. Yes, I would move to approve the resolutions, adding in findings for the design review permit approval as follows. Town Code section 17.020.030A requires that the Fairfax Planning Commission review and approve the design of all new residents and projects that constitute 50% remodels to ensure compliance with the design review criteria contained in Town Code section 17.020.040. The hillside setting of Forest Avenue is like many other residential neighborhoods in Fairfax and is characterized by an eclectic mix of homes surrounded by mature oak and bay trees, along with other native vegetation and landscaped yards. Forest Avenue is not a highly visually prominent street, and the project's location on Forest Avenue is largely obscured by vegetation and other structures. The proposed horizontal hardy siding that would be painted light gray with wood eaves, fascia, and trim painted white generally conforms with the eclectic mix of homes in the surrounding vicinity. Next paragraph, the house would increase in height by approximately 1 inch from 25 feet 5 inches to 25 feet 6 inches, which is a negligible increase that would not be out of scale with the neighborhood or site. The new building footprint would be roughly the same as what had existed, with a minor expansion to the back and a slight reduction on the eastern backside that would move the house further from the eastern property boundary, increasing the setback from the neighbor to the east. The house is and will remain situated on the site in a similar manner to other houses in the neighborhood and throughout the town. The siting and design of the residence is generally in keeping with other residences in the neighborhood and provides a balanced, well-composed design on the project site. The proposed hardy horizontal plank siding and board and batten hardy siding proposed at the front entry and ADU entry inset walls would create a traditional aesthetic that would match existing siding on the house and maintain its character while providing a fire safety improvement. Painted wood white eaves, fascia, and trim would provide a classic, clean, and crisp look for the house's exterior and would provide a contrast to the light gray siding. The light gray siding would create a light, bright, and approachable house. The new gable roof would replace a mismatched and discordant roof line with a gable roof that would create a more uniform and balanced appearance. No new landscaping is proposed, and the project would require minimal disturbance to a site that has been previously disturbed by the existing development. The proposed addition is sympathetic in its design and harmoniously blending with the rest of the house in a way that is unobtrusive and subdued, maintaining its character.
I am so sorry I made you read all of that. Second, your motion to approve resolution number 2023-07 of the Fairfax Planning Commission approving application 2309 for the Hill Area Residential Development Permit, Design Review Permit, Combined Side Yard Setback Variance, and a compact parking space variance for a 50% remodel and two-story addition at 97 Forest Avenue as so amended.
And I have a friendly amendment to that. If I could, on the resolution number 42, which states the site must be maintained in compliance with the VMP approved by the Ross Valley Fire Department on 2/3/23, and then goes on to say that any future landscaping must comply with fire-safe Marin's fire-resistant plants common to Marin County, California list, and MMWD's landscape your lawn, and it also identifies another listing of plants. I would like to recommend that we leave that item as just the first sentence and delete the rest referencing any plant lists. So we just leave it as the site must be maintained in compliance with the VMP approved by the Ross Valley Fire Department RVFD on 2/3/23. That would be my friendly amendment.
I'd be happy to accept that amendment to the motion.
I'll still second it.
So motion Pfeffer, second Newton. Can we have a roll call?
Yes, you can. Newton,
Aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Pfeffer,
Aye.
Chair Swift,
Aye.
motion passes.
Thank you.
There's an appeal period.
Yes, there's a 10-day appeal process, and information on that can be gathered from the planning department. Thank you. Oops, sorry. At the beginning of the meeting, we changed the agenda to move the minutes and commissioner comments before item number 2 to give Commissioner Jansen time to get here. I appreciate that. So let's go ahead and continue with that. So if we go to the minutes and if anyone has corrections on the minutes.
Chair Newton has her hand raised, or excuse me, Commissioner Newton has her hand raised.
Okay, hold on, let me find them here. Okay, so item 3, 129 Lansdale. Let me find where I'm at here. Here they are. The last clause in the first paragraph makes no sense to me. So maybe somebody can explain to me what it means. If the fence on the side is in front or behind the parking, if the 7-foot high fence goes all the way to the corner, reasons for maintaining a longer the front setback variance aside from sightlines. So everything made sense until the last clause. And I don't know if there's some correction appropriate.
Just to clarify, the way I read that was going back to the beginning that Associate Planner Spencer answered questions from the commission regarding, and then reasons for maintaining a longer, a longer front setback variance aside from sightlines. I think is what's tripping it up.
So maybe it's, aside from, okay. I think it's the use of the word aside, as you know, when I think of front setback variances. Other than might be better. I don't know.
Yeah,
That's
I
just-
think that was my question, and that was the point, was if there were any reasons other than sightlines for having that difference.
So I just recommend changing that clause to say reasons for maintaining a longer front setback variance other than sightlines. And then on the top of page 6, the very first bullet, I would just add, she recommended deleting references to the fence from the resolution and then continue it on page 3, blah, blah, blah. And that's it.
Any other corrections to the minutes? Okay, I have one, page 2. Second bullet from the bottom. Should have the word is after the first word. He is not a developer or a speculator. And that's all the corrections I had. You have that, Linda? Yep.
I'll move to approve the March 16, 2023 Planning Commission meeting minutes with those corrections.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Newton,
Aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Jansen,
Aye.
Pfeffer,
Aye.
Chair Swift.
Aye. Okay, then on to commissioner comments and questions. Okay, I have one. So, Commissioner Newton, go ahead.
Oh, thanks. I was just going to express my appreciation to both Linda and Kara for continuing to do such great work. And despite the fact that I ignore their emails until the last minute, and you know, that I'm sure working without a full-time planning department director has a lot of challenges. So I just wanted to say thank you guys, and you know, putting all this stuff together every month is awesome. That's it.
Thank you, Mimi.
I agree. I had a comment that, Linda, could you possibly just address the fact of the changing of the email list, just so folks are aware that signing up for planning commission agendas has changed?
Yes. So I have 6 different lists that contain about 60 people in each one. And so the way we've been getting the agenda to people was to send the agenda to all those lists, you know, right before the meeting. And none of the other groups that do this, they're all signing up through the town website. So we're making the transition at our next meeting, and we sent a notice out to everybody that's included on all those lists that we're not going to do that anymore. If they want to continue to receive the planning commission agendas, they have to go into the town website. I sent all of them the link so they could get straight to the form. But if you go, I think it's on the very first page, and it says public agendas or something, or public meetings. If you click on that, it'll take you to where you can fill in your name, your email address. And rather than me having to somehow transfer all those emails, this is the way the clerk did it when she transferred the council agendas. She used to do it the same way I'm doing it. So just be on notice that you're not going to be receiving emails from L. Neal at Town of Fairfax anymore. If you want to get the agenda, you have to go onto the town website and sign up again.
Thank you. Now we're going to go on to item 2, and we have a commissioner that will recuse himself.
Yep, I have to recuse myself due to a professional conflict of interest due to the relationship with my employer and the applicant.
Thank you. And a question for, could he in fact leave for the rest of the
Yeah, I
meeting?
think you can because we
Because we've taken care of
we did all
everything
the other
else.
business. Yeah. Bye, PJ.
Thank you. Just getting that.
Good evening. Okay, can we have the staff report? Thanks.
Okay, so I'm going to start with a little bit of background. The California Public Utilities Commission has adopted regulations to ensure customer protection requirements are met for California customers of communication providers. The CPUC found that the wildfires of 2017, 18, and 19, as well as public safety power shutoffs due to fire danger in California, resulted in a loss of service to customers that endangered the lives of the customers and first responders. So they have made it a law that companies have to provide 72-hour backup batteries so that their systems will continue to work and people can get emergency notifications to leave in case of wildfire, and they can still get notifications and get internet access. So that's what's fueling these 7 applications to put in battery backup cabinets in different locations in Fairfax. And each proposed battery backup cabinet site is within the public right-of-way easement, out of the travel portion of the road. And when they're placed adjacent to an existing sidewalk area, an ADA compliant 4-foot wide clear sidewalk width has been maintained. On streets with there are no sidewalks, an area at least on one side of the street remains available for development of a 4-foot wide setback in the future. The Comcast power supply utility pole mounted boxes that are existing, they're existing now, those aren't proposed. The new batteries will provide those boxes with 72-hour power. The existing batteries in those boxes that are mounted on the poles are not adequate. They cannot provide 72 hours worth of power. So these are going to be ground mounted in larger cabinets. Most of the locations are proposing 2 cabinets side by side, but one of the sites is just 1 cabinet. I think it's the one on, was it the one on Bolinas? Yeah. So there's a lot of detail in the staff report about, the distance. It's like 4 to 6 feet from the poles to most of the cabinets. There's one cabinet on Willow Avenue that, because there's not enough room for it, per the building official didn't feel there was enough room. They decided to put it across the street in front of 20 Willow, and the lines will run under the road there. So the cabinets will be of metal. They'll be mounted on concrete slabs, and the cabinets will be seafoam green. They require encroachment permits because they're in the public right of way, and the town code allows private owners and other, businesses to use the public right of way, not being used by vehicles or pedestrians for travel purposes, to be temporarily used for structures. And so that's what they're applying for. They're applying to the Planning Commission for encroachment permits to place these cabinets in the right of way. The cabinets are proposed at the following addresses: between 8 and 12 Wood Lane, 10 Madrone Court, 20 Willow Avenue, 76 Manor Road, 111 Marinda Drive, between 414 Bolinas Road and 418 Bolinas Road, and at 445 Cascade Drive. So the staff is recommending approval of all the locations. We did get comments from the building department, and the building official for the 76 Manor Road cabinet, which is actually going to be located on Acacia, It's in an area that people use for parking right now. And so he's recommending that bollards be installed to protect the cabinet. And we've included that as condition in the resolution. At 10 Madrone Court, it's going to be located on the edge of an unstable steep slope. And he doesn't believe that the precast concrete slab will be adequate and that it's going to need some kind of a drilled pier type foundation. And so we've added a condition that prior to issuance of the required Public Works Department encroachment permit, the building official will determine the additional information required to determine the type of foundation that must be used. The cabinet proposed at 414, 418 Bolinas Road, it's the same situation. We've had several sections in that area of the road slide and it's just not stable. It was built in the olden days where they used to just cut, push the fill over and compact it. It's not stable. So he doesn't believe that you can just do a precast slab there. And then on the cabinet at 445 Cascade is also an area that people park in. And so he wants bollards around that one as well. We also heard from MMWD and they added a condition that utility service alert 811 shall be notified prior to any work taking place on any of the approved sites so that MMWD improvements can be located and the proposed work can avoid impacting any existing facilities. And only the one cabinet at 445 Cascade is located within a quarter mile of a known northern spotted owl nesting site. But we believe that the short duration of the installation work and the noise generated by the installation won't impact the nesting birds. It's going to be very short digging and then some, screwing of the cabinet to the precast concrete. So we didn't add our standard condition prohibiting construction between February 1st through July 1st. And so we're recommending that you approve application 2311 by adopting resolution 2023-09, setting forth the findings and the conditions for granting the requested encroachment permits for the 7 Comcast battery backup sites at 812 Wood Lane, 10 Madrone Court, 20 Willow Avenue, 76 Madrone Road, 111 Marinda Drive, 414, 418 Bolinas Road, and 445 Cascade. But I will point out that you did receive a number of communication from the owner and residents at 20 Willow. And we forwarded them all to you. So hopefully you've had a chance to read those. And that would conclude our report.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have questions for staff?
I do. This is the property, let me see. 445 Cascade Drive, page 39 of the PDF. So the placement of the cabinet.
Let me get to it real
sure.
quick.
Yes.
Do you know which?
It's sheet A0, page 39 of the PDF. It's the last project in the set.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and you're on which sheet?
The sheet number is A0. It's the enlarged plan.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So
And
there, in the proposed plan, actually in both of them, there are 2 lines shown. One, a dotted line, which I presume is the property line, and a solid line that shows a dimension of like 1'6" to the or 1'5" to the new cabinet. Now, if the dotted line is the property line, then that's the dimension you'd need. And looking at it, you probably have your 4 feet there. But that's the question. What's what?
I think I'm going to ask the applicants to, I think so I think the dotted line is the property line, and I think that other thing might be a fence. I think the fence is not on the property line, is what I went out there, and I believe that there's a big fence there, and that's what they're showing. So I'm not sure why they called out the distance from the property line to the fence, but.
No, it's from the cabinet to if that's the fence, instead of to the property line.
Well, the 1.5 is showing from the dotted thing, which I think is the property line. Oh, hang on a second. Let me look at the survey. Unless one of you know the answer to this.
I would have to look at the drawing to identify what you're looking at.
Oh, here, I'll show you.
I have
It's
2,000 of these sites, so I'm not memorizing them all.
The survey shows a chain link fence, but that's shown, so this is the question.
A1 shows a fence with climbing vines.
And I believe this. But it's interesting that the survey is not showing.
I wouldn't believe that's the fence because we wouldn't be behind the fence.
People build, in this town, people build fences not on their property lines all the time.
Never.
So,
I would have to go back to the drafters and ask them, but I would believe it's just a. I mean, that would be kind of weird. That would be a fence line.
but not so weird.
I'd have to probably look at it from Google. Again, these are all drafted by our drafters.
Yeah.
You know, based on the surveys. and Information.
So-
I can take it back as a takeaway.
Okay, what's the?
Let me ask a
It's not,
quick,
it's not it's not like a gas line or anything. You know what I'm
No,
saying?
no, understood. No, this is about, which is part of it, right?
If anything,
You need to keep the ADA right away to have your sidewalk in there. And so if it's unclear what's what, that's where it comes from. You have 3 foot on the outside of the cabinet.
but and you're thinking that there might not, so we were just trying to, in Fairfax, we usually just try to keep room for a sidewalk on one side or the other. It doesn't necessarily have to be on both sides. So are you thinking there wouldn't be room on the north side of Cascade to put a sidewalk in?
I haven't verified that.
I believe that's a fence and they've captured, and the adjacent owner has captured the public right of way without the approval of the town. I was just out there. And I parked right by the fire hydrant,
Mhm.
right? And there was a bunch of things. So I believe it's a fence. So in my mind, we would tell the property owner to get his fence back onto his property line. You know what I mean?
Well, I think if that is the question, right? If the
Mhm.
other line is indeed the property line and you have 4 feet or more between the battery pack and the property line, then you can always put a sidewalk in. But if it's the other way around, then it's tricky.
So 3, 4, 5.
Based on the line type, I think that's what it is, but it is not called out. I
Yeah.
can't find it.
So I mean, there's different ways to handle that. I think there's room there. Would you guys be willing to move I mean, can you shift that cabinet around as long as does it have to have a certain distance from the edge of the paved road?
We can move it within a 50-foot radius of the existing power supply. So we've got.
So I think you could just, if you're okay with that general location, you could just add as a condition for that specific cabinet that the final location be determined by the building official before he issues the encroachment permit, working with the surveyor to make sure that they leave the 4 feet.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure that's a fence, but.
let me ask a question of staff before we go further. Was Comcast going to do
Oh, but patient when open
right.
it up to them.
all right. Any other questions for staff?
Commissioner Newton has her hand raised.
I have so many questions. I'm so sorry. Linda, did any of the other neighbors near any of the other locations? I mean, it just seems like the only people near any of these locations we heard from so far. I know we still have public comment, but were the folks from around Willow, right?
Yeah, I received no other communications from any of the other locations. neighbors.
And- Okay, thanks. Do we know how the locations were chosen? Were they just, are other
They're
possible areas? Do they cover the whole town in terms of their
So,
coverage? And
so what I can tell you is that they're near existing power and battery boxes that are mounted on the poles. That's how they were chosen.
yeah, but are there other options, or are these the only
Oh,
ones?
the applicant will have to address that.
Okay.
There's
and
there's four more applications that you're going to be getting from Comcast at a future date. But so there's only a total of 11 proposed in Fairfax, correct, you guys? There's only 11, proposed in the city limits. You're hearing 7 tonight, and then in the future, you're going to get 4 more.
Stop opening up the public hearing before Cindy gets there, Linda. I'm sorry, I'm just giving you a hard time. The other question I have for you is, do we know what the rules are in terms of our approval? Is there some special reason? One of the commenters from Willow asked for a postponement, and I don't know if that's within the realm, because apparently there was some issue with the notice.
You know, there were a lot of issues with this. So the original notice was incorrect. It went out 3 days early. It was sent out on Friday, right? We corrected it and sent it out again on Monday. And I specifically emailed the owner of 20 Willow to make sure he understood that that the cabinet was going in front of his property, right? Because of the little glitch. But you know, they indicated that they were relying on the first notice, which went out on Friday. They thought they had till June. It said June 20th instead of April 20th. So they thought they had 2 months to prepare. And so they feel like they haven't had enough time to prepare, right? So that, yes, they requested a continuance, but then I heard that Mr. Mellon, Bob Mellon, is going to be trying to attend from New York tonight, but he's not there. Okay, so apparently he dropped off because he said it was just 10 o'clock. It was going to be 10 o'clock where he was, and it's just too late for him. So,
So that sounds like,
my recommendation would be, just based on what happened, and you know, it is kind of close to their driveway. It could create visibility issues that you may want to continue that one, you know, to give them adequate time to, you know, otherwise they've indicated they had me send them an appeal form. So, I mean, I think if you take action tonight, they will appeal that one to the council anyway.
Did you have a chance to look into the recommendation regarding putting one underground on Willow?
I did not, but I think the applicants can address that. My understanding is they can definitely go underground. It's just more expensive and it's harder to get in and maintain them, right? That's what I'm told from. Okay.
I can address that during the presentation. We can
yeah.
answer it now, either
No,
way.
no, we'll wait.
Open the public comment yet, so I'm just asking staff questions for the moment.
I'm hearing different things from different people. Some people say they can be put underground. Other people say there's no way they can go underground. So
You can bury anything technically. I guess that is true.
Yeah.
It's not advisable for this.
So
All right.
Did you have other questions, Mimi?
Can I ask them to hold off until we open the public hearing so I can finish
Yes.
my questions for staff? I have a few questions for staff, and they may be things you want to listen to, because they might give you a hint of the questions I'm going to ask you guys. So the other question I had, Linda, was about the spotted owl. And you saying you hadn't included the usual prohibition. Did you consult with a wildlife specialist about whether or not the short duration of the
I actually based it on something we got in writing from the state, where they said that the owls are not as sensitive as they originally thought, and now they do allow construction if you under certain circumstances, they've granted exceptions to people to actually build entire houses within 1/4 mile of a nesting site. So based on the fact that houses take, months to build,
Well,
but you know what, if you guys want to be safe, if you feel better putting it back in, I don't have a problem with that.
well, I have another issue, which is about, one of the Willow neighbors wrote about her concerns, I believe, with his concern with electromagnetic frequencies, EMF radiation from the units. And I don't know that the application included any analysis of whether that's an issue, not only for humans, but endangered species. So do you know anything about that issue?
So I'm hearing that it is, I'm going to let the applicants, because they're the professionals on this, but the amount of EMF that's released from the batteries, it's like, you get the same amount from your phone, but I think they should probably address that. That is not, as far as staff's concerned, EMFs are not an issue with these battery backup systems. They're going to run very limited amounts of time, in emergencies only to save lives, and notify people that they need to evacuate because the fires are about to burn their houses down and things like that. I think, I'm sure
Do you know if bollards on Willow would further cause, the encroachment to go into the sidewalk or the street on, I'm just wondering about the concerns that the Willow neighbor had about somebody running into the battery on Willow. And we
so the
talked
the building official, he's the public works manager, and he looked at all these sets of plans, and he went out to all the sites. And so he's the one that made the recommendation for the bollards, and he did not think it was necessary on Willow. That wasn't one of the ones that he made that he recommended that for. Someone's going to I guess anything's possible, right, in the right of way, but this is up on the sidewalk. So someone will have to be, out of control, drunk, driving up on the sidewalk to hit the cabinet on Willow. And yes, it could happen, but the building official only recommended bollards on Cascade and Acacia.
Okay, thank you so much, Linda.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for staff before I go? Go for it.
Linda, I might have missed it. Is there a condition for improving that public right of way with these projects? I know if a resident was doing a major project, they'd be required to add a sidewalk, et cetera.
Yes, no, we're not requiring that for
So
Comcast.
no public improvements with these projects.
No, just the bollards to protect the cabinets.
Okay.
Yeah. In our opinion, this is a public improvement. It's for the emergency response, and so it's.
Do you know what percentage of the town uses Comcast?
No, I don't, but maybe they can answer
Okay.
that. I don't think they can, because I tried to get that kind of information. They said that's not how they don't do it by number of customers. It's like an area served, right? Instead. So they're going to have to address that. Yeah.
Were there alternate proposals for the assembly? Was there any other locations assemblies in these locations? Were you presented with anything that did put them in a vault, or that did put them on a pole?
No.
Or anything else? They came
No.
up with this
It
recommendation.
I'm not exactly sure how it happened, but they turned them in first to like our public works and our building department. And they sat in there without anyone bringing them to the planning department's attention for a really long time. Then when I got involved, it wasn't clear to me what they were. And so I started reviewing them like a telecommunication system, right? And then finally we figured out, right? They're not, they're battery backup systems that are only going to operate in an emergency to run the power source.
Okay. And it, from,
So no, this is all we've gotten. This is the second round for the one on Willow.
Okay.
That one was proposed in front of 23 Willow, and the building official said he didn't think it was going to fit.
okay.
So that's when they relocated it across the street.
And is there a reason that we've partitioned out the other 4 that we're not hearing those?
I did, why,
Okay.
they'll have to
Oh,
address that. I don't
that's
know.
fine.
I only got the
That's
6
fine.
from, yep,
Um,
the 7.
and my understanding is that these are replacing a smaller battery pack, typically that's on a pole next to them.
That's in the
Um,
pole with the
right.
power source. Yeah.
Do you know, or did you ask the question whether or not those boxes, which sound like they'll, from the presentation that I see on, it's been given to us in print, looks like they're gonna now just be up there empty, but used as a pull box. Did you ask whether we could take those down?
No, my understanding is the power source is staying in there. So the batteries are going to run something in that green box that's staying in the green box.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I read it that they're removing the battery from that box.
Well, there's a
and it's-
battery and a power source
Okay.
in
got
the
it.
box, and the battery's coming out of the box, but there's still, and you're replacing and upgrading the power source that will be run by the batteries on the ground when the power goes off.
Last one.
Okay.
Does the town have a precedent of requiring utilities to let us paint their boxes?
Not that I know of.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay.
I have an additional question based on what I just heard. So these 11 are for Comcast. Does that mean we're gonna see 11 for AT&T and 11 for T-Mobile and going forward?
I asked, I mean, I don't even know who I would ask. I'm assuming that everybody's going to have to do this, but we haven't gotten anything from anyone else. Some people, some of them may have already put things in, maybe without permits. The building official seems to think there's a couple in town already that he doesn't remember going through any kind of a process, but I would assume yes, right? You can ask them that too. Everyone, anyone that provides emergencies, that has to run someone's phone, right?
Mhm.
In an emergency, I think is going to have to do this. It's a law. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, my questions, and you can tell me if I should be asking Comcast when we do public comments. My first question is, and you sort of responded to that, that there's 7 locations now. And my question was, are these the only 7 locations that serve all of Fairfax? And it sounds like there's 4 more coming,
There's
but
4
we
more.
can, and I'll clarify that that's the total amount. And again, this could be a Comcast question. Bolinas Road only has 1 cabinet where everything else has 2. Do you know why?
I do not.
I will ask that one then. Okay. And it seems that all on the plans, there's differences between the distance from the road to the cabinet or the road to the concrete pad
Mhm.
that the cabinet's there. So is that, I don't want to say that's random, but
How did they decide this?
how did they
distance?
decide
I don't
that?
know.
Okay.
Yeah.
On Willow, do you know how far from the parking spaces, so the end of the fence on Willow, that this cabinet is? Because one of the comments was line of sight.
Yeah.
So do
I
you
do
have
not.
okay, all right. And I did hear that these can be like 50 feet from is what I understood. And would you know when these are approved, when the assumption that construction would start? You don't know? Okay,
No, that you're going to have to ask them
we're
that.
batting
Yeah.
0 so far. And the question that I had too was whether, not from a town standpoint, but whether these cabinets were paintable. So that would probably be a question for Comcast as well. And I think that's all my questions for staff.
Okay, great.
So this would be the appropriate time if Comcast was going to do like a PowerPoint or a presentation.
Would you like one? I have one.
Okay, and if
Okay.
you guys can introduce yourselves.
Yes, thank you, Chair Swift. Commissioners, special thanks, Commissioner Jansen, for getting up here in time. Really appreciate it. My name is Brian Botari. I'm Government Affairs Director for Comcast. This is Billy Glisson. He's the construction manager for California, in charge of this resiliency project. And thanks to Linda also for shepherding us through this process and the many dozens of emails she's answered from us during this. I do have a deck. I can zoom through it. It actually does answer quite a few of the questions that have been posed thus far. So why don't you go to cue that up? All right, next slide. All right, so when we're talking about our services, these are the main services we offer as Comcast. The ones really at issue here are XFi, which is our broadband internet product, and then Xfinity Voice, which is voice over IP. So your telephone service that goes over the internet. All of these products require that modem, the gateway, to have power to it. So what we have seen and what the Public Utilities Commission saw during all the PSPS events and fires, a lot more folks have power walls. A lot more folks are using generators for their own home when there's no commercial power. So there are more people that have these gateways active. So our network needs to be energized as well. And our network is dependent on that commercial power. Next slide. This is busy, but it kind of shows why our network is dependent on commercial power. So the head end is where our signal begins, goes out through those hubs on the left, out through fiber optic cables to those gray triangles called nodes. Those nodes, you'll see the little doghouse looking cabinets in your neighborhood. That converts the signal from fiber into coax, which is the copper thing that screws in the back of your TV. So the copper requires a commercial power source to push the signal along into the neighborhoods and into your home. So each of those gray triangles on the diagram here represents a power supply that is positioned at just so in the network to push that signal along. So all the questions about can these be moved, the reason they cannot be moved is they are positioned just so to be able to push the signal appropriately to the customer's home. Next slide. You can skip this one. So this is the resiliency order that we're following from the Public Utilities Commission. This went into effect August 12th of 2022. So this requires all communications providers, cellular and wired like us, to provide 72 hours of backup power for all of our customers in tier 2 and 3 fire areas. So if you're not familiar with the CPUC fire threat map, the areas in 2 and 3, those are the ones we're required to provide backup power to. So when you ask about if this is covering the whole town, all of those types of questions, these are only serving the customers that reside in tier 2 and 3 areas. I don't have the map in front of me, so I don't know what percentage of the town that is.
I think it's pretty much all of the town.
It's pretty much
either going to
okay.
be 2 or 3.
Yeah. Maybe like where we're not even where we're standing, maybe downtown, but yeah, so pretty much the whole town. So we have 11 of these power supplies serving these customers. The first 7 we're applying for now. The other 4, we were looking at different battery technology. Sounds like we might be going, I don't know. So the other 4 weren't quite baked yet, but we wanted to get these 7 going. The rain has stopped, fire season is upon us. So we want to get this work moving. Next slide. This is some of our customer outreach around PSPS. You do your own outreach for these cabinets, as do we. Go ahead, next slide. So here's what we're talking about, what they look like. So the power supply on the pole on the left, that has the 4 hours of battery backup in it. That is remaining. On the right there are the cabinets. An example of the cabinets we'll be putting in. The batteries inside essentially large RV batteries, enough to power that section of our network for 72 hours. To answer the painting question, the answer is yes. You're welcome to paint them as long as all of the venting is clear. It is powder coated, so it's a wrap would be preferable, probably. But we have no issue if you want to do anything you like to them visually. We can also change the color on our own if you prefer a different color. If you want forest green, anything, we're happy to do that as well. We can also provide some landscaping options. We work with customers. This is the gentleman on 20 Willow, obviously not our first customer who's expressed some reservations about the cabinets. We've installed hundreds of these throughout the state so far. So we'll work with them to tweak the location, tweak the appearance, provide some visual shading.
Actually, the example on the left, we actually installed a lattice, kind of secure, privacy type of lattice around the cabinet in that green between the curb and the gutter. I mean, between the curb and the sidewalk. And that was approved by Marin County. So we're very creative. We're trying to be accommodating to the homeowners as well as to the jurisdictions. So.
Next slide, please. So as I said, the mandate went into effect August of last year. So this has been our solution, sans battery, is rolling these diesel generators out in a extended power outage to power the network. The resiliency order was, I guess, born by PSPS and fires, but it applies year round. So storms, when it's wet too, we have to roll these generators out when there's an extended commercial power outage. And I know we had quite a few of these in town during all of these storms we had. I know there were quite a few PG&E outages this year. We appreciate your consideration of these cabinets. Win or lose on the batteries, we still have to fulfill this mandate, and this is this alternative. So I would like the commissioners to keep that in mind as you consider this item. We want to make sure that folks can receive communications and internet during extended outages. So thanks for your consideration. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions for the applicant? Commissioner Newton?
Thanks. So what about the proposal for the underground vault? It looks like there's already underground, excavation expected at Willow. So I was just curious what your reaction to that suggestion from one of the residents on Willow.
Thanks, Commissioner. Apologies, I forgot to address the undergrounding question. So as we're talking about cabinets full of RV batteries, essentially, it's not advisable to place them underground for a couple of reasons. I think one, you can't make vaults watertight in all cases. I know PG&E has incursions on their underground transformers frequently. We don't want water getting into these things. So that's one. Two, to be able to provide the venting, you have to keep them cool. The size of the vault we would need would require excavating pretty much the entire street. I mean, it would be quite a large vault. The gentleman on Willow expressed reservations about the small amount of construction we would have to move the line across the street to feed that. That would be nothing, frankly, compared to what we would need to do to locate a vault big enough to fit these batteries in safely. And even then, again, the water incursion is the main issue. We're really not.
Yeah,
Really, I think that.
Yeah, I'd like to add, in comparison to a normal trench or wire going in 24 to 36 inches deep, unless you're doing a complete sewer main or PG&E doing a major gas line, that's 36 plus inches below. As folks, I've driving over here, I've seen some major plates on the street. That's obviously some major construction going on, pretty deep depth between 36 and below. So imagine a 5 foot tall cabinet that's already 52 inches tall have to bury that 52 inches by 36 inches wide. And to Brian's point, we have to ventilate that. So in comparison to a 24-inch depth conduit that I'm running class 2 wiring circuits across the street is very pale in comparison to a proposed vault in this size. Not an uncommon question, which bewilders, but I've been in the business for 30 some odd years. So, but we do see a lot of these types of questions. And I believe we do have to reference that even TG&E and other folks that do have underground facilities are trying to raise them above the ground and put them on top because of excursion of corrosion and elements. Obviously, we're trying to remove the, as they're doing more underground work, but they're burying those electrical lines, but their electronics are above the ground. They're not below the ground. So I think that's very important to relay to the customers and homeowners and the constituents is that the wiring may be underground, but your electronics is above the ground for a lot of different, obviously grid reasons. And the same thing here for the battery cabinet.
And do you guys have information about the EMF radiation from these units? If they're only getting turned on when the rest of the electricity in town is off, basically?
That's correct. Any EMFs are negligible. It's the amount of batteries you would need to power our power supply, which is already in existence and at a safe levels of EMF and considerably lower than the power lines above it. So it's how many watts are we talking? What's the power draw on the power supplies?
Oh, the power supplies, anything below 12 amps.
12 amps.
And have you guys done any evaluation of potential impacts on the northern spotted owls?
We have not. That one's
Fairfax?
unique to Fairfax, as I think you appreciate and acknowledge. So we have not. We're leaning on Linda for that one and staff. But it's not very intrusive construction, to be sure.
All right. I guess I'm thinking about the EMFs only because I'm aware of some studies in Europe that show that EMF radiation can cause eggs to get thinner, the eggshells to get thinner. So I'm always just concerned about any time we're putting more electromagnetic frequencies into areas where there are spotted owl nests. But I'm gonna, I don't know what the potential impacts of 12 amps might be, but that leads me to my other question. And you sort of touched on how you decided where the poles were, is just because they're co-located where the other batteries are, or are there other battery locations still within the town border? Or is it just the 11 total?
Just the 11 total.
Okay.
And to go back to the power question, the batteries are meant to replace, just to back up what's already out there. So it's a net zero for power usage, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, but they're within 50 feet of the transmission.
No, so where the power supplies themselves are located is because of how our network is configured. So to be able to deliver the signal to the customers' homes, the power needs to be where it's located. It's engineered that way so that the signal can make it all the way to all the homes it needs to.
I'm afraid I don't understand power very well.
I would say think of it as water. So it's power. We're transmitting a radio signal essentially, right? And we're using power to push it along. So if you think of it like water, it's not running downhill, it's running flat. So every so often it needs a little push. And that's what the power supplies do. The current's flowing, it needs a push every so often to make sure it keeps going.
Okay. And finally, the bollards, one of the residents on Willow was concerned about the potential traffic, and I think there's other parts of town where you don't have as much traffic. I think, if you looked at those correspondence, they point out that this is the one way up into that neighborhood, and there's a lot of people going up and down that road. When you get to some of these other streets, there's far fewer, I think, people dependent on that one little stretch of road. So I was wondering about the bollards on that location and whether or not they might help prevent, what the resident was concerned about, which is somebody running into it and causing damage outside their home.
We're open to bollards and put them in front of these all the time, I think. And we are completely in agreement with the recommendations from the building department. I don't know if that one was one of the locations they recommended, but
no, it wasn't. I'm asking about it because it was not.
We're happy to. It's up to y'all.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's all questions.
Commissioner Jansen.
So basically you're replacing a 4-hour battery with a 72-hour battery pack, correct?
Correct.
Then except for some controllers, the rest essentially stays the same. First of all, that's a good thing. I mean, I'm actually happy that that happens. It makes the system more resilient, so that probably should be said. But my question is why, so the current 4-hour battery hangs in those poles in a box. Why don't you take that box down?
Yeah, why don't you take that one?
So to remove that power battery box off the pole, we have to reapply for our utility permit with Pacific Gas and Electric, or the utility company. And that's a whole new process for that. And then it also could expand the boxes or the more cabinets, because we're moving the electronic power source that you referenced, Linda, down into those cabinets where now we have batteries versus a shelf just for the power supply unit. So we're moving that power supply down. We'd have to move the utility services down the pole into that cabinet. If it's not metered, we'd have to go to a meter, which would be a building permit, a utility permit, an additional type of cabinet, and then additional services would have to be moved, and possibly another cabinet or two would have to be installed to allow the number of batteries to maintain that 72-hour timeline based on the amp load with that unit in there. That power supply unit is so big, so it takes up a pretty good shelf space. And that's why we decided to leave them in the existing pole mounted. Obviously, the weight from the batteries we cannot put up on the pole. So we just decided to have the storage cabinets down on the ground and leave the power supply unit up on the pole.
I see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so you're running DC from that controller to the battery?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you have questions?
I do. So I think what I heard is it's actually possible, but you've chosen for a number of reasons not to do that. But it is possible.
It is.
It's possible.
Okay.
But again, it opens up a lot of other requirements to meet for your jurisdictional, for your ADA compliance, your permits, those types of things. So we decided to caution on the lesser impact and just go with this decision. So we're not the only ones either. From our wired counterparts in the state that are mandated by this is the same mythology. So.
Okay. Can you tell me what percentage of residents in Fairfax are served by Comcast?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Can you guess?
Could I guess? Well, how many of you are Comcast customers? 0. 1, so 20%, but 40%.
Okay.
Approximately. I think it's probably more or less.
Okay.
But there's different, I think some are just cable TV, some are just broadband, some are neither. So this would keep our entire network up. So even if you're just flipping channels when the power's out, it will still work, which is a bonus, but obviously not the intent of the CPUC there.
I think the important piece of that too is some of your critical agencies may have our fiber or coax services for backup or police or fire. I don't know who they may, but we have to keep that in contention as well. If they do have our services, this is going to keep those folks up as well. I mean, they may have Comcast and other providers as backup. So got to put that in retrospect either. So, not just the customers. We do service hospitals, fire departments, police departments.
So, but you don't know if our EMS system in town uses.
I don't know
Comcast?
personally, no. We would have to, that's some of that's proprietary information we can't share with the public. So,
Okay,
I'd be able to share if the city was a customer. I don't know that offhand.
okay.
Town, excuse me.
You described some design considerations that you've used in the past of shrubbing it up or adding enclosures and things like that. What's the mechanism to do that? If a neighbor wants some sort of design consideration, how does that go? How have you done that in the past, and what would you expect we would do here?
So when we notice that the project is coming, it's door hanger with contact information of our business partner who will be doing the installations. The customers contact them and they have a conversation. So it's just an ask. I imagine we'll be discussing with at least one of the folks in town here about that. Yeah.
Do you have a kit of parts? Do you have a plant list? Do you have how do you help the neighbor understand what's possible?
we really leave it up to them. We speak to them about what their preference is. We do try to keep it within a budget. Again, we have 2,000 of these sites and I do have a budget to maintain. So, but knock on wood, the landscaping we've done has not been that exorbitant. So we just really work it out with the resident, trying to keep it friendly with, obviously drought, type of plants or type of structures that's not going to hinder. It's really an in-depth conversation with three different parties. Us, the trying to accommodate, working with the jurisdiction, with the inspectors of the buildings or the encroachment department based on line of sight and other things. And then obviously the homeowner. And usually it's one or two homeowners, right? You got one on the left and one on the right side that you're most likely having conversations with. So it's almost a four-party conversation when you're talking to these folks about any type of landscaping or fencing, any proposal. We built like that one on the example, we built some lattice, which I didn't think was going to get approved by Marin County, but they did. And then some folks, where they may have like roundabout or turnaround into their driveway and the house sits off but the pole and the right of way is in that section between the driveway and the roadway. We've built some privacy fencing, to a degree, as long as we have access, just like we need access to the pole units 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for maintenance. So we've been really trying to accommodate from that retrospect and not have a list or a guidelines. We just kind of go with what's out there because there's so many different options we've seen, from dry landscaping to, succulents to desert. So it's just really, we just try to stay open with that.
I think that's it for now. Thanks.
So my questions for you. Why is there only one cabinet on Bolinas versus two?
Tell me if I'm right.
Okay.
It's the power draw for that supply. The power draw for that particular supply doesn't require as many batteries as the others.
Okay. Is that based then on the number of houses that one pole
Yes.
would serve at that point?
Yes. Correct.
Okay. Oh, and before I forget, if we could get a copy of the PowerPoint, so we have that from them. Okay. All right. Mention that there's 4 other sites that will be coming before us. But you also mentioned that the design or the battery solution may be different than what we're seeing before us now, if I got that correct. Can you speak a little bit more to that from what you would know?
The cabinets themselves would not look different. We're just exploring, or would they?
No, the cabinets are, so
The cabinets are the same. It's just we're looking at potentially different battery technology for some of the sites, depending on the power draw. We're looking at some lithium ion solutions potentially.
So the cabinets themselves would remain the same size?
Yes.
Okay,
it's just what's going in them are different.
right.
Depending on the raw load, which are usually higher.
Okay. On the plans, it looked like there were different distances for each of the sites between the cabinet and slab and the roadway. Was that measured? Was that random?
No. No,
Not the right word,
Yeah,
but yeah.
we try to go by the standard ADA compliance based on all the jurisdictions we're drafting. Our drafters do this for a living, so they have all the jurisdictional requirements, 2, 3, 4 feet, whatever that is, from the right of way, from the curb to the, to those dimensions. We also, by PG&E guidelines, we're supposed to be 5 feet from their pole before we can, because there's a 5-foot climbing radius or access radius. Which a lot of people don't climb poles anymore, like I used to when I was a kid, but they use the buckets now, but you still need that safe space to, put your utilities or get to a ladder or something. So that's the 5 foot. So that's usually going to be your cabinets are always going to be at least 5 feet from the pole. Now we can kind of cheat a little bit if we needed to, depending on the situation, and PG&E usually doesn't say anything, but we can't put these right up against the pole. So, but the rest of the dimensions is just based on where we see the sidewalk, where we see fence lines, where we see curbs, where we see sidewalks. So it's really not random, but it's a calculated measurement. So
That sounds better than random.
yes, it does.
Um,
I did.
Are those batteries tested? Like a lot of standby batteries?
Yes.
Do they go through a period where like once a month or whatever, you run some kind of
Yeah.
test through them?
Yeah, we do a self-test on these, just like we do normally with our current units already. We go through a maintenance process 2 to 3 times a year. Obviously we're deploying these, we're doing a lot of self-tests, ensuring that they're holding that up to 72 hours. It's one of the compliance with the CPUC ruling, is we have to display we are at 72 hours, and knock on wood, our testing units and some of the deployed units have been 70+ hours. So it's been really a great success. So part of that, and part of the monitoring system on these newer systems, we have a full encompassed system that's monitoring each battery. So each battery has to have a certain amp load, and we can see one that would go dead, which would obviously send a notice to our network maintenance technicians to go out and change that battery or go test it or troubleshoot it. So, and we're all UL listed. We went through the federal stand mandates for these cabinets and the batteries. So they're all been through all the rigmarole from our federal process for UL tested and safety and type of material and, hazards and all those great things that we have to make sure we're ensuring public safety.
So when you test them like the 2 or 3 times a year, do you test them and see that they're up for 72 hours? So 2 or 3 times a year, you're going to have them running for 72 hours. Is that part of the test?
It is a part of it. Yeah, it's a litmus test,
Okay.
basically. Yes. Just
Okay.
to make sure they're maintaining that, because then obviously if a world situation happened, you're going to obviously withdraw that load, and then it would take some time for that trickle charge to come back into that. So it has that maintained. So there is some give and take in that process. So.
And I think I heard you say that the cabinets needed to be within 50 feet of the pole. Did I hear that right?
So what Brian was describing was the 50-foot comms, that DC cable we were talking about that's communicating. So you have to put a 50-foot radius or length into that. So most of our pole mounted are 12 to 15 feet up on the pole already. And then you have that additional 35 to 40 feet down the pole into where the cabinet can be. So we do have some flexibility to move it around. I know we proposed one across the street. So we do have some larger wire we can use that kind of pushes that 50-foot limit. but we were really trying to stay within that 50-foot radius.
So the 50-foot though, is horizontal or is 50 feet total from up there?
Total.
Okay, so on the ground, what
30.
would roughly be,
Roughly 35.
all right. And this might be a question because I hadn't considered this when I was looking at the package. I know I was, as I was going out to sites, one of the things that I was looking at was, you know, how do these cabinets potentially blend in to locations? And so I was thinking about, you know, painting them and whether, you know, they could be painted. Then it was like, okay, what do we decide paint is going to be where? But you brought up a whole different process that you use that I wasn't aware of, whereas you have, when you get ready to do construction, and that'll be one of my questions, that ideally from your perspective, when would you like to start?
As soon as possible.
Tomorrow?
That answers that one.
As Linda
But
said, they've been sitting on the desk for a while.
Realistically, you're just waiting for the go ahead and then you'll be in. Okay.
Yeah, as Linda indicated, we submitted this phase back in March and April of 2022 of the first 900
Right.
sites. And unfortunately, in folks, towns like this, they did get stagnant in some locations until we had to obviously unbury it. But yeah, we do have some mandates from the CPUC we had to be in compliance with. So we kind of worked our way on the larger type of scenarios or the jurisdictions, and then we're trying to come back through the smaller jurisdictions. like
So
this.
from the CPUC, do you have like a date that you have to be in compliance on all of them?
The date was August of last year. So the CPC doesn't mandate the method that we do the backup. They just mandate that it's backed up. So
Right,
right
that
now
you've
we're
got
doing
the
the
72-hour
generators.
capability.
So right now we're rolling the generators when there is a large scale power outage, where it's safe to do so. So if there were locations this year that were flooded, we couldn't get the generators to them. Or in a high fire threat situation, there are areas where you don't want to roll generators on a red flag day, right? So the batteries are our preferred solution. So they automatically turn on. We don't have to worry about that, anything like that.
So tonight was the first time I heard about the process where when you get ready to work at a site, that there's a door hanger or the neighbors are at that point in time, somebody knocks on their door and says, you know, we're getting ready to put this here. Do you want planting? Do you want a fence around it? So you have that discussion with what would be amenable to the homeowner if it's like right in front of home. So my question for staff is, how does that work within the town if, for example, a homeowner said, well, I want you to plant bushes around this so I don't see it, or I want wooden fencing around it. What's the process within town to get that reviewed, approved? Since it's also in the public right of way.
Yeah, so if it's a structure, it's supposed to come to you guys. Structures in the public right of way can only be granted by the planning commission. So I don't know if you can, if you could include in your resolution language that would give the building and public works department some leeway to approve screening structures or planting, you know, on a case by case basis, working with the owner. That might be the way to handle it. That's the only thing I can think of, because otherwise it's going to be very onerous and difficult. Yeah.
Okay, I think those were all of my questions for you all. Thank you. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
It looks from the drawings like there's some room for expansion within the cabinets. It just looks like the one cabinet doesn't have as many batteries in it as the other. So are you planning for expansion? Are they future proof? Or are we gonna get another cabinet next year?
No, we've calculated a certain amp load and voltage future wise at the top level of our specs. So, and then to Brian, as he described, as we build out our plant, we have to build additional power supply. So the current ones wouldn't be impacted. We would have to build a new one. So in theory, if there was some major development in this lovely town, which probably wouldn't happen, like you see where I live out in the Sacramento Valley, where hundreds of homes are going in. We're putting in multiple power supply units for that. So for this particular situation, no would be the answer, because I would have to build a whole new power supply. And if that fell into the tier 2 area, probably would, because there's just a small section, then we would have to put another cabinet like this. So then the reason there's room in that cabinet is because they're built the same, whether they have 12 or 18 batteries in them. So that's the only reason. Do you see that room in there?
So the one that has 12s, there's room for a power supply in there?
No, there's not. Yeah, I knew you were going with that. So
how big was the battery that was in that power supply cabinet that you are going to remove?
The one up on the pole is basically a steroid car or RV battery. This one that we're putting in for the backup, weighs about 150 pounds. So it's elongated. It's long too. So it's not the square like you'd pick up at an auto parts store or battery location. So
do you have cabinets that are right size for the power supply only without the battery?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Could you replace that cabinet up on the pole with one that's right size for just the power supply now that you're going to remove the battery?
That is a great question. I'd have to go back to the manufacturer. I don't believe they make just for the power supply unit itself. It usually has the shelf for the power supply and then that battery location. So I don't think they just make just for the power supply. Plus it needs to be vented. So it'd probably be a little bit larger anyways, just because it stays vented from that. Because if you look at those units, the shelf where the power supply unit is on, there is some distance in there or ventilation. And then the battery cabinet itself, there's probably 2 to 3 inches between where the batteries sit on the bottom shelf to the top shelf where that cabinet or the XM power supply sits. So there's some ventilation going on with some louvers and other things. So
for the record, I look at those things all the time. Every day I see those things up on those poles. So I think if we could get them off of the poles, it would be really great.
I had a follow-on question to the Willow Avenue site where the the cabinets would go across the street from the pole. So we're looking at 35 feet from the pole, right? So can you tell me approximately where you've got that cabinet located on the plans now, how far that is from the pole?
We'd have to look. I would guess, educated guess, that we're maxed out when you cross the street.
yeah, probably. Yeah.
Just about.
The drawing shows 21 feet.
You have narrow streets here. So we've got a little more room. And I think we haven't had a lot of chance to work with that particular property owner. That location is not set in stone by any stretch. We're happy to work with them to locate it in a more suitable location with, of course, all the other considerations of the space y'all have here.
So you've got 35, you've got like 14 feet of roughly play on.
Yeah, I imagine we've got a couple
on that
architects.
sidewalk.
Yeah, I imagine we've got an architect or two up on the dais. So I think we're Pythagorean theoreming it. Yeah, diagonally around. Sure,
Right.
absolutely.
So conceivably it could be moved further away from the driveway, for example.
Yes.
Conceivably. All right, thank you. Any other questions for the applicants right now? From the commission? Thanks. Then I'm going to open it up to, you can have a seat if you want.
We've done this once or twice.
We'll lean on the dais.
All right.
Lean on the.
I'm
Thank you.
going to open it up to public comments. Is there anyone in the room that would have any comments? Anyone on Zoom?
I see no hands online, Chair Swift.
All right, then I'm going to close public comments and bring it back to the commission for discussion. So
I'll go ahead.
go ahead.
So the willow, there's different locations, right? Each one could have its own ins and outs. But I think the willow location is different in the sense that if you go through the drawings, it doesn't actually show where the driveway is. In some locations it is shown, it's indicated on the drawings. In some, it's not relevant because of where it is, but it's clearly missing. So I think that needs to be fixed. First of all, it needs to be on the drawings where it is, and obviously because we have heard about it, it needs probably a refinement where it is. But that seems possible, so that should not be a problem. It's more about how we go about it. I think regarding the other locations, in general, right, what is happening is they're sort of roughly where two properties meet each other, which seems to be logical. So it doesn't sit in front of a house. Typically, there is more than 48 inches clear, so a sidewalk can go in or can remain, but they're not always. And that's where it becomes another story. So the very last property where we looked at where that property line is versus where the fence is, if that holds true, I think we reached that conclusion. You always have your 48 inches between the cabinet and the real property line. So that could receive a sidewalk if that ever was needed in the future. And there is one that is where that doesn't work. And that is, let me quickly look which one that is. That is Manor. And so that one, basically where the sidewalk now terminates, it makes it a dead end. That seems a bad idea from a planning standpoint, because if you were to ever extend a sidewalk in the future, you would do it there. So that's one that maybe needs a different location. Now, that was my first thought. My second thought about it is the permit is revocable. So you could build it here. If the town wants to extend the sidewalk, well, then you got to redo it, which is not a big deal. Same battery, you just need to make a new path and run new wires to it. It's relatively easy to move, I think. It will cost money, but so the concern, if it's located in an area where you couldn't fit the sidewalk, actually is not so strong as I initially thought. So my second thought about it is, well, it's probably okay from that standpoint only. So then I think it comes back to the first part. Where are the driveways? Not all drawings show it, including not the Manor Drive. So I think those driveways must be indicated on the plan, because that's a critical part of where that unit can be. So I'd have two things. I'd need to see the driveways. I would like to probably postpone the Willow location, because that obviously has an issue that has to be resolved before anything can be approved. And then my last thought here is adding things to it, planting or fences, or, I mean, I'm unclear how we would put that in. I think staff suggestion to use some language that gives the town leeway to add things in coordination is probably a good idea, because they're relatively small. I mean, we have units like this all over the place to do the stoplights and all kinds of things. So I don't know what it would look like, but I think that would be the right solution. And then with that, I'll give it back to the floor. Thanks.
Okay, though we have them all over the place, I think these are one of the horrible events of public streets these days. One of the things that I have experienced recently, I've been spending a lot of time in Sacramento, and they actually have a public art program to paint all these boxes. And it doesn't make them good, but it makes them better. And it does seem like it's something that Fairfax might embrace. The one at Manor is actually on Acacia. I want to make sure that we say that again. And that is a parking spot. People park there. And I think that's got to be a condition, that these can't be located in a spot where they would actually remove a parking spot. That road is challenged, and that's why it is a parking spot. And people just park up against the fence there because there's not a lot of parking on that road. And I don't know what the solution is. I think that if we could understand where the driveway was across the street, we might be able to say, oh yeah, it would work great right across the street, but we don't have that information on the drawings. So that one, actually, I also think that maybe we continue until we can get that further information. The town is quite challenged in parking, particularly in the little hill roads, which there aren't many of on your proposal, actually. But this is one that's a very small road on Acacia, and that one spot is critical, believe it or not. I'm concerned about not having some list of elements that residents can add, because most people aren't going to know to ask even. And I'm sure you probably count on that. Okay, well, that's great. That's great. That's great to hear. I hope that there's some requirement for adjacent neighbor input on every one of these, not just the person it's right in front of their house, but maybe, everybody that can see it from the front right away of their house or something, to make sure that it is a community acknowledged piece of infrastructure, whether they're served by it or not, that people are going to have to live with. I really wish we could take those boxes off the poles. They are a blight to our neighborhoods. Our neighborhoods, people are looking up at the trees all the time, and then you just see these horrible metal boxes that are really out of place. I think that if we could gang them in a slightly larger cabinet on the ground, it would be a positive to the larger negative that these things create in the aesthetic of our town. I don't have the technical knowledge to understand if that's a reasonable request, but I certainly think it would be better. I think that's it for me. Thanks.
Commissioner Newton, do you want to weigh in here before I do?
Well, yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with Commissioner Kelly regarding the boxes. I agree that Willow, I think we should probably postpone at least. I don't want to, I mean, part of me wants to keep the language about the spotted owl, prohibit the construction during the spotted owl nesting, which is just a short window of time. But, I'm really curious as to how we think we would resolve the concerns that I've heard from my fellow commissioners so far. So why don't you go ahead, Chair Swift, and maybe we can think as we go about, what our end conclusion will be on this item. Over.
So I had a question for you. When I look at the plans, you can stay. I mean, you got to do the microphone. When I look at the plans, all of the cabinets are parallel to the road.
Correct. That's correct.
So is it feasible to make them perpendicular to the road?
It is dependent on the distance and your jurisdictional standards. So I'd would defer to your guys' standards.
Yeah, I was thinking about,
You'd have to go out there and measure because you turn it that way and you're going to have less room for a future sidewalk, or you're going to keep less of the sidewalk clear. So we'd have to go out and remeasure. I don't know whether that would, like for instance, on Wood Lane, the sidewalk's already there. If you turn it that way, is it going to narrow it below the requirement for ADA? We didn't check that.
okay, yeah, and I was just kind of thinking when we talk about the Manor one, where it's going behind the Manor site on Acacia, that, and the parking issue, that it might be narrower overall, to have it perpendicular. I don't know. I was just thinking, if technically it's feasible
Yes, it's technically feasible.
to do that.
We would just
That
have to
was
follow.
one, right? Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I would support, I think, postponing possibly Manor and Willow to look at some of those issues. In Willow, we had neighbors, that had concerns. So I'd want to hear those. And a question on the owls, the Madrone Court site, is that within a quarter mile?
I thought I checked them all and the only one was the Cascade one.
Okay,
So I checked Bolinas, I checked Madrone, I checked Cascade.
okay.
And I
Because I
checked
know
Manor.
that nesting sites are being surveyed right now, and I know.
And that could change things, but we're using the map that we're told to use.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
And we do have the capability with the map they've given us to zoom in and actually locate parcels. So I'm able to figure out the parcel and whether it's in the circle. And the only one I found was 445 Cascade.
Okay. But I do support Commissioner Newton related to her concerns with the owls. And if we've got one that is in within a quarter mile of a nesting site, I wouldn't want us to do anything different than we do for other applications that come before us. So that would be a concern.
So you can add that condition back in.
Concern of mine. And I think when we talk about, the flexibility to make these more aesthetically pleasing for the neighbors, I think there's got to be some perhaps notice. I guess I'm a little concerned that, the process is, and I appreciate that you guys are willing to work with the neighbors, but that it's kind of like putting something up on the, letting the folks know. And then I don't know if there should be something more formal coming from the town as far as notifying people that there's some flexibility, or if that just kind of opens up some other issues. I'd want to look at that somehow to make sure that, there's information out there for neighbors to be aware that there's some flexibility potentially with how those look, but then have a way for the town, for that to go to the town, for the town to kind of say what's reasonable or feasible for the location, if that makes sense. So I think, overall, I want the owls back in and postpone Manor and Willow and discuss those again. That was my thinking. Commissioner Newton, any further?
I mean, it sounds like we have general consensus on the idea that Willow should come back. And I could definitely go along with asking for Manor to come back. I appreciate the idea that we could include the spotted owl, the usual prohibition against construction during the spotted owl nesting season for 445 Cascade. I would specifically want, some engagement with the people around that Acacia location and around the Willow location to be involved in discussions of whether bollards would be, a potential solution, whether refiguring the location of the cabinets on Manor is appropriate, and with respect to the remainder, the other 5, I guess, the question is whether we as a group feel comfortable with approving the applications without requiring the boxes to be removed from the poles, because I definitely agree that they are a detriment visually to the town. However, I can also see how they're already there, and making the cabinets even bigger would not allow, us to, we'd have to start all over again for all of them to require the boxes to be taken down from the poles. So I don't know. Does that mean we would have the votes to move forward with the other 5 as is, plus a spotted owl paragraph? Or, are we really talking about telling them we want them to go back to the drawing board? I'd love to hear what you guys think.
Okay, I'll go first. I'm comfortable with the 5 going forward, with some of the with the spotted owl, with some of the things we had talked about, like language to have discussions with the community, come to planning as far as possibilities. And I don't know how you would work that.
Let me make sure I'm understanding. So you guys are willing to put in some kind of a language like, so you want Comcast to reach out to the neighbors that are affected and come up with a solution, and then make it subject to approval by maybe the public works director and the building official, the final screening method, and it should include things such as lattice or planting, right? So that it's not, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something that would be.
Well, it
obnoxious.
sounds like their normal process is that they contact.
Right, but you want to tie the town into the screening. Yeah.
Yeah, because if the neighbors want to plant 4 trees around a cabinet, that's not going to work.
That's right.
So it has, to me, I think anything in the public right of way like that has to have.
Public Works Department and the building official have to grant a second encroachment permit for the cabinets. So that's another bite at the, right? Comcast can notify the applicants we're going to start work. right? Work out some kind of a solution, and then it gets presented with the second encroachment permit, encroachment permit to actually do the work that gets granted by Public Works and or the Public Works manager, who's the building official. And they would look at the final solution, the plant material, right? And discuss it with planning. I mean, the reality is they would give it to us to look at, right? And then we would have to sign off on the location of the plantings or the location of the lattice work, right?
As well as the bollards
As
and
well as
everything
the
else.
bollards,
That's
right. And the foundation type for the two that the building officials worried about, right?
Right. Yes, and I think one of the things that Chair Swift was concerned about was ensuring that the proper residents within the area of the proposed location have been notified that, you know, they could engage in this discussion with the company, you know, as part of that. And how do we go about ensuring that? I mean, I understand that Comcast would go out and put, you know, knock on doors and put little things on door knobs and things like that. But
You might ask Comcast if they would be willing to send like certified registered letters to the two affected neighbors, because those I've had complaints at town hall from the door, the hangers. People say I never got them, you know, I didn't, not necessarily Comcast, but other hangers that have been hung out by other. And I don't know if people are telling the truth or what, but if you send something certified registered, then you can at least prove that you actually formally tried to get something to the people, right? Because
Okay.
otherwise, I mean, there's so many situations in this town where people can like misrepresent what happened, you know, oh, Comcast never contacted me, you know, even though a hanger was left. I can see that happening, right? You know, they're out of town or whatever.
and right now you're just talking about like the people who
Well,
live in to the 5 that
Right.
aren't Willow or Manor.
Right.
And I guess it would behoove Comcast to also reach out to the people on Willow and Manor, because if we bring them back bring Comcast back for another hearing on those two, having those people now express any change of heart because their concerns have, you know, potentially
Been
been
addressed, right? Yeah.
on Willow. And I guess just you know, I don't know exactly who's parking behind the Manor house on Acacia, but you know, you at least give it a shot that the people that live on Manor and next door to them on Acacia might be affected.
Well, notices were sent out to everybody within 300 feet.
No, but I'm particularly talking about the opportunity to
The people
talk
immediately adjacent, yeah.
about the screening and the lattice and the, you know, whatever, right?
I would definitely support a condition that required within the notice to specifically state the opportunity to affect the aesthetic of these boxes with planting, lattice, etc.
So listening to this, so in the resolution in Article 6, that speaks about any changes, modifications, additions made to the approval set will require modification of the application. And then it continues, modifications that do not significantly change the project design, or the approved discretionary permits may be approved by the planning director or the planning commission. And I think that's what we talked about before, that would then need including additional planting or screening. That is what we spoke about earlier, so that could roll in there. And then either following on this article or as a new one, there would be one that stipulates that Comcast would contact adjacent neighbors to review any additional beautification of the cabinets, including planting or screening or trellises, right? Those are the two things we're talking about. So if we weave that in the resolution, that would cover that part of it. Is that a good summary?
I'm sorry, can you just say that last piece again?
Either following in Article 6 or as a new one that would be stipulated that Comcast, which they're already doing, but we'll state it in here, that Comcast will contact the adjacent neighbors of each of these locations and review with them any additional beautification of the cabinets, including planting and screening. I'm just hanging it on those two words, but we could put something else in there.
The only,
I think you should say would offer to, because you can't ensure that the people would take them up on it. So, yeah.
Sure, offer, yeah.
plus they can't ensure that the town will approve whatever the residents may want.
No,
So
that's true.
we
Yeah.
want it to sound possible improvements or enhancements.
Well, maybe we shouldn't talk about it. Leave it
Well,
open. Just do it very simple.
I think you could just say subject to town approval at the end of what you're suggesting.
We were,
Right.
which is, oh, yeah.
All right. So maybe I have a motion.
Before you get there, let me just do a couple quick corrections to the reso as it's written. That's okay. So
Here in red.
the one item, and I have page 1, which doesn't sound right.
No, you wanted recorded copy in number 1 on page 2.
Thank you. And then number 7 on page applicant,
Right.
Comcast utility, or however you want to frame that.
I have those both written on my copy in red. I just
Thank you.
forgot.
That's all right. Okay, Commissioner Newton.
Oh, sorry. I didn't catch what you were saying about number 7. Was that number 7 on page 2?
Correct, that it should, instead of referring to the property owner, it should refer to the applicant Comcast utility.
Okay.
And before we do a reso, a question for staff, if we're proposing to continue 2 of the sites, how do we address that? Should we do that before this reso or?
Yeah, I would make a motion to continue those 2 items and then you do the reso and remove any reference to 7.
To those 2 sites, okay.
20 Willow.
Okay.
Do we need to get Comcast's consent to the postponement of the Willow?
Because you should give them the opportunity to demand action so they can appeal if they're not happy with your decision. Good advice.
Thank you.
So
Appreciate it.
do you, are you okay with postponing? I know you're not okay, but are you okay with postponing
Well,
the 76 Manor and the Willow site until a time certain, like the next meeting?
Well, it depends. You just want them to try to contact the property owners to see if they can work out like a better location, right? On both of them, or screening. Correct? One that might not take away the parking space on Manor, and the one that will be further away from the driveway. Isn't that what?
So I thought one of the reasons to continue Willow was we didn't have a chance to hear from the applicant themselves. We had letters, but we didn't have,
You didn't get to hear from.
we didn't
from the
get to
property
hear
owner.
from the property
Right, and
owner.
he wanted to be here, but he said it was going to be too late for him. So he was in attendance for a while and then he dropped out. when it got to be
Well,
where he
and I
is.
also suggested that they reach out to the neighbor during this postponement period in order to see if maybe instead of all the objections that we got, they were on board.
They could work something out, yeah. But I think they're in a hurry because they're already past the deadline to try to do this
Well,
stuff.
That's
So-
right. So let's just ask them if they're willing to postpone.
So would you be
Continue till May
willing
16th, I
to
think.
postpone Manor and the Manor site and the Willow site until the next meeting? And then we can move forward, it sounds like, on the other 5 sites tonight.
So the question before us, if we do not want to postpone, those 2 sites go to council. Is that what is on the table?
Yeah, so the commission can deny those 2 sites if you want to, if you demand a decision on something they want on the 2 sites they want to continue.
Mm-hmm.
They'll vote. They don't want to, they need more information and they want to have a chance to hear from the gentleman who owns 20 Willow, who was here for a while and then he bowed out because he, he expressed that he didn't think he was going to be able to stay up late enough since he's not in.
Understood. I was just
Yeah.
curious about the process, Linda. I
Yeah, and
appreciate
so
it.
then, so if you get,
We don't go in front
if
of a lot
you
of
force
planning
them to
commissions.
take action, right?
Uh-huh.
You could get a denial. And if you get a
Understood.
denial, then you can appeal their denial of those 2 items up to the town council. Right? But it seems like people feel they can move forward with the other 5 sites. So they're finding a way to, they're trying to find a way to separate them.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to continue the Manor site and the 20 Willow to the next meeting and then take action on the other 5 sites.
Understood. A couple things. So the Manor site, the issue was just the parking space, correct?
Walk, park, I guess ideally it would be if it could be
So,
somehow located
let me-
so that the sidewalk could continue.
Okay, so how this frankly has worked almost everywhere else is that the cabinet location is approved by planning or the building department. This is our first planning commission, to be quite frank, because of how your ordinances are written. So if you just want to put a condition of approval of Manor, not take up a parking spot and leave it to staff's discretion. Like we still, no matter what you do today, we can't place a cabinet without staff's approval, regardless. So if you put that in your condition for Manor, we're happy to work with them on that.
Well, so my concern is that you could be putting our public works director and our building official, like when I went out to the site, it's smack dab, the sidewalk comes around the corner and it's going to be right next to that cabinet. And there may not be a lot of like places that can fit in with your, you can only be 35 feet from the pole and everything and still protect the parking. I don't know if it's possible, is what I'm saying.
I'll say that I want to review that site and I want to review it with
Yeah.
additional information. I want to understand where the driveways are and what's across the street.
Okay.
So are you okay with us postponing?
Oops, sorry. Are you okay with us postponing the Manor site and
know,
the
We should explain to them why we're making such, because they're new at this. So we are
They're
bound
new
by.
in Fairfax.
We're bound
new
by
at this.
the California Permit Streamlining Act. We have to take action on these applications within a certain amount of time from when the application was submitted. So if you don't agree to when you agree to a continuance, the town can't continue you more than 90 days. Right? We're indicating that we would continue you for 30 days to the next meeting. But that's why they're asking if you're willing to agree to the continuance, because both the town and the applicants have to agree to the continuance, right? For no more than 90 days.
Understood. Okay.
We're
thank you.
telling you that we're only going to continue you for 1 month, right? To give you time to try to talk to the neighbors or work with our building official to figure out if there is a better location on Manor, that would be better, right? Meet with our staff and go to the 2 sites and see if we can come up with something better that we can then show to the planning commission at their next meeting.
Okay.
For just those 2 sites though.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's helpful. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Sorry.
Apologies for my obtuseness.
No,
Again,
I don't-
first planning commission.
It's why you were looking blankly, but.
Yeah, again, this is the only
think I've
planning
since-
commission in the whole state
Since
we've been to.
4 a.m.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. Okay, one more question, sorry. On the Willow site, do you all need to see a happy homeowner as a condition of your approval? I ask because there's a reasonable chance we're gonna end up at council on that one anyway,
Not
if that's
necessarily.
your,
No, not necessarily. They want you to give it your best shot. And you can meet with our public works and our building official and the owner. And then you tell them what you did to try to come to some kind of a,
well, yeah,
Right?
and if the homeowner
and
appeals,
the
we're
homeowner could
right
say.
back
what
at
he's gonna
council, right?
Yeah, I mean, the homeowner, and so do
Yeah.
you. If you don't get, if the homeowner doesn't get the decision that they want, they have a right to appeal. And if you don't get the decision you want, you have a right to appeal. So they're just giving you some more time to see if you can work it out,
Okay.
knowing that sometimes you can't, right? They're very aware of that. But you can't always work it out.
And I think from our perspective, I think we have questions or not only are we concerned
Right.
about the homeowner's concerns, but I think when we look at that and we look at where it is on the plans, we may have thoughts in our mind that cabinet can be, there's some flexibility to move that cabinet a certain amount of distance from where it is now. That might be a better solution.
Mhm.
So.
But I'm sorry, Commissioner. Go ahead.
In addition, so the Willow plan does not show where the driveways are. So there's also missing data, which compounds the problem because it's just not, it has to be in there.
That's been driving me crazy all night. We put on the basic drawings on basic standards. So if there's additional requirements, we would expect that as a return response from the jurisdiction. So the continuing ask that this wasn't on there, that's not a standard practice. So I just want to make that known, that
Yeah.
thousands of permits that I help process every year, showing a driveway or certain obstacles or areas are not standard. It's just the workspace. So if you folks, if the jurisdictions and the planning commissions and the city councils or the public works director folks, we rely on you folks to provide those red lines and comments back to our drafters so we can go out and look at that, some of that information. Keep in mind, some of this information is not readily available. It's, it's high, it's best guess sometimes from a Google shot. So it really, you kind of keep that in retrospect. I've been hearing that all night and I'm just trying to process it in my head, but we don't usually normally put those on our permits. We just put our workspace based on the right of way, based on the road, based on those parameters. So additional information, we would really have to understand your circumference you're looking for. I get what you're asking for, but keep in mind on how we would draft that out. At 99, I've been 30 plus years I've been doing this. 99% of the time it's a person like myself with a public works inspector standing out there on the driveway, working this thing out versus this being drawn up, debated, and then decided on. It's really hands-on. It's really what gets us to the next level at these things. So I just wanted to put that out there.
So I want to respond to that. In most of your drawings here, you do show where the driveways are, and those are readily available. All assessor maps will show them, so that's an incorrect statement. Secondly, this is a condition of your approval. You're stating it's stated in the resolution. You can't put it in front. So if you ask us to make a review of that, you need to show it.
Again,
There's no way around it. We're not out there with you on the site. We're making a decision
I
here.
understand that, but we didn't know those resolutions until we submitted these permits and we never got the responses back until recently. So it almost feels like we were supposed to provide this and we didn't know this until just recently.
I understand, and I appreciate that we're a little different in that respect, and that your drawings are normally for a different purpose than what we look at. So I fully appreciate that. And would you like the drawing redone with the driveway, or do we want to just put it off until, I mean, if they're acceptable to continuing this to have, and they're going to have a discussion potentially with the homeowner before the meeting that we may see something totally different come back that would show where a location might be.
Oh, I mean, if they decide to move it, but I predict that they don't have a lot of places where they can move it on Willow.
Right.
Right. And so they already tried to do it on the other side, and the owner has captured part of the right of way. Part of the problem is that, Fairfax doesn't have a code enforcement department, right? And so a lot of things happen that have created situations where this might not have been such a big deal, right? So they moved it across the street because they were faced with a situation where someone had captured part of the sidewalk area, right? So if they come up with an alternative location with the neighbor, right? I mean, I don't know what you guys want. Usually you want it documented in a drawing, right? We don't really know in this situation whether the issue is going to become the location of an adjacent driveway till we get to this public hearing, until we start to get the input from the neighbors, right? So I'm not sure what you want. Like if they can work it out, that's great, right? And then we come back and the neighbor says, oh yeah, they just need to shift it over 3 feet or whatever. But if they don't reach a resolution, then I think you're going to need revised drawings with alternative options. You know what I mean?
Well, the request is just to be able to see it, just as the drawings show where
Yeah,
the
you want
property
you
line
want the site plan to
is.
include.
Because otherwise you move it away from one driveway and then it's going to sit in front of the other. So
But how
you keep spinning around.
So here's what I understand that the person filing the complaint thinks it's going to block their visibility. So you're going to want their driveway shown, right? Correct?
No, the houses that are shown around all have a driveway, and that should be on there so that you can exactly make that decision. Somebody may think it's too close, but you can look at the drawing. And if you were to move.
Oh, so are you saying you want the houses plotted and everything? The house?
They are. So the drawing shows the roadway, it shows the sidewalk, it shows the property line, it shows the houses where they are.
Oh, you mean?
And most
but
of them
that's
show the
okay.
driveways, but the Willow one
that's not
doesn't.
yeah.
So we see the concern, but there is no way to cross-check it with what's going on.
Is that Willow?
It's just a drawing thing.
Right. There's elements on this proposal that we need on the drawings to evaluate the proposal. There's an adjacent fence. There's adjacent shrubs that would impact our decision. There's a utility box actually that's right there also that's not drawn. Would also help us make our decision. There's just more information is needed. Yeah.
So I'm not arguing. I'm only seeing house locations and everything on the survey, and the survey doesn't plot the boxes. You see what I'm saying? So you're, the plans that I was mostly focusing on is the AO page, which shows the box, and that does not show house locations on any of them. You know what I'm saying? So do you want them to try to, I mean, that's kind of a lot to try to take the survey, blow it up, and then plot because the survey is what shows the house locations.
Right, but typically also shows the driveways. If you go to the very first project on 8 Wood, you see the houses, see the property line, you see where the driveways are.
So you want LS1 modified to show the cabinet locations, correct? And the pole locations.
Well, we were mostly talking about the driveways. That is the big issue. It seems like a very small thing.
Yeah, but it seems
but
like
instead of talking about it, it's good if it is on the drawing, so then you can see whether or not it's close to somebody's driveway or not.
I'm just trying to think of an easy way to explain it to them because it seems to be creating a hardship for them. So Willow. Oh,
So what I did with.
So on Willow, it's the page T1. They could easily draw in the driveways on page T1, correct?
Which
Yeah,
page
they've
did you
got
say?
a scale.
T1?
T1,
Correct.
they've got the scale and everything.
Correct. That's the drawing
Yeah.
where I would expect to see those same lines indicating
Okay, so then
approximately
let's
where it
look at-
is.
Let's look at the Manor one. and see if it's the same page. Because if we can make it really clear, right, where we want, what page we want modified, it'll make it easier for them.
Yeah, it would be the T1 page on Manor. It does not in the current location, it doesn't seem relevant, but it is not shown where the ones are from the opposite side.
Why am I not finding Manor?
But the background is, it's a requirement that it's not in front of somebody's driveway. So if that's not shown in a drawing, then how can we establish that?
So my
But-
thought
but if-
on
if you-
Willow was when I went out there is, it's looking, assuming that the drawing is correct where they wanted to put it, which I would assume so, because it's kind of the easiest and shortest. They went directly across from the pole to 20 Willow. So it was
Mhm.
like a T. They went directly across. What I don't know is looking at that, how far that is from the driveway and the end of the fence.
Yeah,
They have a
so
sense of that. Other than just looking straight from the pole over to Willow, to then have a sense of how far that could be moved.
I mean, staff can go, we can go in the field and measure it and tell you how far the end of the cabinet is going to be from that person's driveway. But what I'm hearing you say is you would like to have page T1 modified for the Manor site and the Willow site to show the driveways that are impacted by the current proposed cabinet locations, correct? Is that correct, what you want?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so. Yeah. This is. This person made a complaint that this is gonna create visibility problems for her driving. But the driver, they don't know where the driveway is, they can go out in the field, but they don't, unless it's drawn somewhere, they don't see how the driveway interacts with the pattern, right? I mean, they can decide, they see where the driveway is, and they say, oh, this person doesn't really have an issue, doesn't really have valid complaint, because they don't have a drawing. So I think you should be able to modify this page and then for some reason I can't find what you know.
We can certainly update any of the drawings
Yeah, so
based on your guys's,
yeah,
what we call red lines or comments. So
Mhm.
we want to make sure we're providing the right information.
Yeah.
We don't want green lines, right?
so you get a letter of action from me
Perfect.
for this meeting that will explain what you're asking for,
Okay,
right? And it's just for the two sites you need that they want more information for. Manor site, I'll give it all to you.
no, I know, but I think brain's gonna work in here overtime. If you have been up since 4.
It's kind of hard, isn't it? Yeah.
And I got another 10-hour day tomorrow. So just the understanding of, we can redo the drawing, but then the conversation with anybody out in the right of way, with public directors or the homeowner. Is that an expectation? Also update the drawing or up to date the drawing after the conversation?
I think you would have the conversation first, because you may have ways to address the person's concern, like shifting it over a foot, you know what I'm saying?
Okay,
And if you get total resistance, then you come back and tell the planning commission in writing, we tried to meet with them, they refused to meet, you know what I mean? You can-
but I also want to provide the planning commission with the right information here.
Right,
So
they
I want to
want-
understand what I need to update from a
They
drawing.
want to see where the relationship,
Expectations from that.
yeah, the relationship of the cabinet to the driveway on Willow, and the relationship of the cabinet to the parking space and where the bollards are gonna be on the Manor one? Is that what you're asking for, kind of? A site plan that'll show the driveway across the street.
Yes.
Okay,
I'll send you a letter.
that's all I need.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
So going back to that, to my original question, are you okay with continuing those two sites till the next meeting, which would be a month from now?
Thank you for slow walking us through with all that. Yes, we're happy to come back in a month.
All right, on that happy note, I'm gonna make a motion. Let's see if I've got this all. Gotta get to the top of the thing. I would make a motion for us to continue the applications with respect to the Manor and Willow locations. That's my first motion.
To a date certain? To the regular
regular
May
meeting.
meeting.
Exactly.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I'll call the roll. Newton,
Aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Jansen, Chair Swift.
Aye.
Chair-
Do we have a motion or can somebody put a motion together on the other 5 sites?
Yes. So I move to approve resolution number 2023-09 of the Fairfax Planning Commission approving application number 2311 for 5 revocable encroachment permits granted to Comcast for power outage, emergency backup battery cabinets located at grade within the public rights of way of the town of Fairfax, adjacent to the following addresses: 8 and 12 Wood Lane, 10 Madrone Court, 111 Marinda Drive, 414, 418 Bolinas Road, and 445 Cascade Drive, with the following changes to the resolution from the staff report, and that would be to delete the references to 7 revocable encroachment permits wherever they appear and mention the 5 revocable encroachment permits, and delete the references to 20 Willow Avenue and 76 Manor Road. Okay, and on page 2, paragraph 1, talk about recording a copy of the revocable encroachment permit in number 7. Oh, no, number 6 on page 2, add language indicating deleting everything but the first sentence of paragraph 6 and adding including any plantings or other screenings. Is that right? And requiring that the applicant provide notice to the property owners on either side of each of the locations of an opportunity to work with the applicant on any potential screening or other aesthetic changes subject to town approval by the Department of Public Works and the building official, by including the normal language about prohibiting construction during the spotted owl nesting season with respect to 445 Willow. I think that's it. Did I miss anything? Did I get that all right? That's my motion.
And did you in page 2, number 7, change property owner to Comcast utility, or however you want to phrase that?
Right, that's something I forgot. Yeah, number 7.
Do I have a second?
A second.
I will call the roll. Newton,
Aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Jansen,
Aye.
Chair Swift.
Aye. Thank you. And I need to say that there is a 10-day appeal process on the resolution. The ones they approved, that there's a 10-day, yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate the time and consideration. Thanks
Thank
for
you,
the drive.
guys.
Have a good evening.
We'll see you soon.
All right, I think we've done all of our business. Ask for a motion to adjourn. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Supposed to call the roll. Newton,
Aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Jansen,
Aye.
Chair Swift.
Aye. Thank you.
Good night, you guys.
Recording stopped.